I was planning to apply to the National Defense University, but my fiancée greeted me with a cold warning. I went to the capital to apply for a residence permit. She shouted after him, "Don't come to me again." Song Jinyan was jealous of me, even when I didn't raise my head. A slight prick in the heart, but no, she didn't doubt me at all. I changed my mind and then I heard, and right on the day school started. We don't need to go to the authorities because no one was going to keep the children's promise anyway. I was in a hurry. I simply nodded without explaining anything to them. I was supposed to study at the National Defense University, 1,000 miles from here. I had long since become disillusioned with him and was no longer going to wait for anything. In the end, we had one common goal. It all came down to getting rid of each other forever. Just yesterday, I went into the school office. "Teacher Chen, I have thought it over and will go to study." However, my budget quota at Peking University was replaced by private tuition. The richest are going through hard times right now. My position seemed uncertain. My gaze was firm, but Teacher Chen froze in confusion. The tension reached its limit, and I finally pushed the door. "I thought you were going to give my quota to my cousin to get him a job. But private tuition at Peking University is a completely different matter. I had to completely change my data and keep my identity secret. Did I discuss this with my family? There was no point. I could make the decision myself after hearing everything from my family. A pain stabbed through my chest, but it soon subsided. I was disappearing from their world. Perhaps this opportunity will never be taken away from me again. It all started when my uncle drowned in the river while trying to save me. My parents brought my cousin to their place. They told me that I owed him my life and had to pay for it. To pay off this endless debt, my parents gave my cousin the best of everything, but my fiancé became interested in something else. Both love and kinship were taken away from me. In order to defend at least the remnants of my future, I was forced to do this. My parents made me accept it. Uncle Jai Yun even suggested that I switch partners with Lin Zhang. I spent the whole night without sleep, lying on a narrow bed by the balcony. Finally, I understood everything and was not going to back down anymore. I decided to break up with them all because I was tired of being part of this game. The red wind blazed like fire. Walking through the streets of Qingwen, I felt as if I was dreaming. Men in blue uniforms scurried around, operating large dryers. Yang's smile flashed for a second. The noisy world no longer seemed like home to me. Suddenly, a jeep stopped right in the middle of the road, blocking my path. The door opened, the glass rolled down, and a cold face looked at me. Jai Yunshu clearly didn't know how to wait. Should I demand an explanation from the school that I'm not their student? Of course, I understood everything perfectly. But I didn't do this at all on Jai Yunshu's orders. Having called Beidai's name out loud, I went to a place where no one could find me. My curt refusal was met with silence. Song Jinyan's face froze somewhere in the backseat. Here, much depended on the subtle calculation and skill of the player. "Cousin, look at Sister Yunshu," a voice said nearby. "They bought me a whole bunch of things, clothes, shoes, and even a radio." He threw at Beidai, "No one is allowed to look down on us." I kept staring at the necklace hanging around Song Jinyan's neck. The facial features seemed distorted, and a sharp pain pierced the heart. There was only blood all around, the only thing my grandmother left me. Moreover, it was a sign of Uncle Jai Yun's special affection. I never thought that Uncle's feelings for Song Jinyan would go this far. In fact, this necklace was originally intended for someone else. Uncle Jai Yun also noticed my gaze, and a hint of awkwardness flashed in his eyes. But everything quickly fell into place because Jinyan liked it. However, in itself it had no great value. "I'll buy you another one when you want it," flared up inside me with resentment. It wasn't about the jewelry at all, but about who exactly wore it. It was just a pity that these were just the unspoken thoughts of Uncle Jai Yun himself. Yes, Uncle Jai Yun never really loved me, and so I had no intention of cherishing this relationship. At that moment, Song Jinyan heard someone's phone ring. While jealousy flashed in her eyes, she deliberately cast an evil glance at Sister Yunshu. My cousin looked unhappy. Was it because I had stolen his enviable bride from Beidai? "I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have taken what belonged to someone else. I'm not claiming anything." Uncle Jai Yun couldn't stand Song Jinyan's tears, and his face instantly darkened. He looked at me with undisguised fury. "Jinyang's life is already full of hardships. You already have everything, why do you need to compete with him?" He immediately rushed to console Song Jinyan. "Don't worry about trifles. The place at Peking University is yours, and no one can take it away. You go home and think carefully about your behavior. When you get it, you'll apologize to Jinyan. Otherwise, I will never forgive you." Having thrown out these words about the oil scandal, I turned and left. All that was left behind was thick smoke, covering the entire area. Song Jinyan's joyful laughter from the back seat cut into my ears. I was filled with anger that literally took my breath away. Just think, I did nothing and kept silent, but always ended up being to blame for everything. I stood there for a long time until a dry leaf fell on my shoulder. The loneliness had been lingering since my parents abandoned me to the cares of others. Uncle Jai Yun would always tell me he was there and that there was still love in the world. What a shame that even those who swore to be with me until the end so easily betrayed their word. Heavy clouds covered the sky, and I looked with bitterness at my parents, who blindly believed they were right. I no longer needed a bride who had so easily abandoned me. I had just approached the house when I heard a ringing laugh, and I raised my eyes to the sky again. The crimson clouds resembled a cruel mockery. My voice had become quieter and lonelier since my parents brought Song Jinmian into the house, turning me into nothing. Since my uncle once saved me, I felt obligated to take care of all of this. From children's clothes to parental love, I endured until the very end. But in the end, even my own fiancé turned away from me. I felt like a ghost in my own house, standing silently at the threshold. Their cheerful laughter cut better than any knife. The pain in my chest was so intense it felt like my heart was bleeding out onto the ground. Casting a long shadow, I lit a cigarette. I pushed the door open sharply, and the laughter in the room instantly died down. It seems that my appearance has once again spoiled the idol of their close-knit family. My mother gave me a fleeting, indifferent glance. Pointing to a worn stool near the newspapers, she silently placed a bowl of rice next to it. There are only a few vegetables inside, and on their table. Besides fish and beef, my parents have been telling me since childhood that my cousin's body needs nutrients. So give him your best. This forced me to be reasonable and give in. Make way for food. My parents never really thought about it. I'm only 6 months older than Song Jinyang, and I need proper nutrition too. Mother woke up and put a piece of fish on my plate. She smiled and said, "This is your favorite food. Hurry up and sit down," but there's not a single emotion on my face. "Mom, I'm allergic to fish, but my cousin loves it." Mother was no longer as patient as before. She scolded me for being too busy and looked me straight in the eye. "There's no time for affection. Did you make that clear at school? Give the training in the Northern Dynasty to your cousin. You did great, let's do it again next year." I remained silent. My mother's tone suddenly changed to stern. "How can you not want this? You owe your cousin your life. There's nothing wrong with giving up Betamin. If you don't immediately agree to move out of this house, I no longer have a son like you." I feel dizzy, and there is a red handprint on my cheek. Under the angry gaze of parents, it felt like I was being attacked by countless knives. While still trembling, I could see that Song Jinyang was upset. No need to force my cousin. I look sad maybe because I don't have a higher education. I don't blame my cousin, and there's no one to blame. My parents rushed to console him, promising to make me give up Betamin. "I will buy him a lot of gifts." Song Jinyang smiled. I looked at them and said, "Cousin, it never occurred to me to take your things. If you don't mind, I can leave." My father became furious and attacked me angrily. "Are you happy now? You've driven my family crazy. Don't you dare talk to your cousin like that." I wiped the blood from my lips and looked at my family. These people were my blood relatives. But at that moment, all they could think about was how to make me disappear. Just as my father was about to hit me, Jai Yunshu, who was standing nearby, intervened. Su Yuan agreed to give up his position in Beidamo. "To make sure everything is on point, go to school today." My parents were happy, but I was so angry that my mother was ready to incinerate me with her gaze. "You know what? Since your cousin is going to study, you are going to work. Pay his tuition, remember that's what you owe him." I looked at the mother, who was indulging her favorite. "How can you say such cruel words?" It seemed like my parents completely ignored any of my feelings and reactions. With an unyielding attitude, they sent me to work immediately after the summer holidays. After all, I'm no use at home anyway. The parents nod silently in agreement. We move on to meet the next family. I'm starting to think about how best to help Song Jinyan organize this important banquet. After all, for the Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Group of Beidai City, this event is of enormous significance. In this house, no one cares about me. My existence here is perceived as something unnecessary, like a household trash can. When they need something from me, they use me without hesitation. And when the need disappears, they simply throw me out of life without a second thought. I don't even know at what point I managed to lie down in bed and fall asleep. My heart has long since gone numb. There is no warmth or compassion in this cold house. I'm so oppressed that sometimes I can't breathe, and this atmosphere has reigned here for over 10 years. All that remains for me is to sleep on the narrow, drafty balcony. I remember the park where social workers once handed out toys and candy to children. But here, in this place, both in summer and in winter, I am greeted only by a piercing wind and cold snow. 10 years have passed, it's a hot summer, but my heart still feels cold. Every night I look at the night sky and count the days. There is only a month left until I leave this house forever, where no one loves me. Since this place doesn't need me at all, I'll just disappear once and for all. Last night I had a strange dream again. In my dream, when I was very little, my parents carried me in their arms and surrounded me with care. Jai Yunshu, who was 2 years older than me, gently pinched my cheek. It seemed so sweet to me, as if I had immersed myself in the waters of a warm, healing spring. But as the years went by, my life turned into a complete nightmare. My parents' faces seemed so distant and alien in my memories. Jai Yunshu also left me in the end. In my dream, I screamed through tears, "Mom, little sister, don't leave me," and I ran after them, feeling like I was going crazy with despair. But my legs felt like lead, as if in punishment for some offense. I tripped and fell, pain and deaf hopelessness closed in around me. I couldn't resist, and my parents and Uncle Jai Yun didn't even deign to turn around. I left with Song Jinyan, and again he plunged into endless, oppressive darkness. The smell of smoke from the street woke me up. I opened my eyes abruptly. I thought I had become indifferent to them, but deep down I still desperately longed for love and recognition. Luckily, it all turned out to be just a nightmare. At that moment, a jeep drove into the yard. Noticing a tall man getting out of the car, I hurried down. "Su Yuan, I heard you studied at Peking University." "Not bad," a voice reached me. "This tall man is Uncle Jai Yun's adoptive father and an old friend of our family. My father-in-law once saved him, and out of old friendship they decided to unite their families. In fact, Jai Jiangguo is the only person who really treats me well." Jai Jiangguo gently touched my head. Looking at the girl standing next to me, he said loudly, "You know what? In honor of Xiaoyuan's success, we'll definitely set off some celebratory fireworks." Jai Yunshu immediately frowned. "Dad, this isn't for Xiaoyuan at all," she retorted dryly. "Xiaoyuan himself said he didn't want to study. It would be better if this Peking University were named after Jin Nian. I will study hard for the next few years, and I will definitely not let anyone be disappointed in me," she added. Jai Jiangguo's expression changed slightly, but I stopped him with a gesture just in time. I forced myself to accept all this with humility. "Let's wrap this up, just go home and get some rest from the journey. I'll explain everything to you later," I think to myself. I don't want Jai Jiangguo to have any unnecessary problems because of me. Otherwise, it will expose the entire seamy side and secrets of the university order. I just want to leave quietly, without attracting unnecessary attention. I really didn't want to get involved in all this. Jai Jiangguo's face changed slightly again. After casting a quick glance at my daughter, he hurried away. Only Uncle Jai Yun and I were left in the yard. Uncle Jai Yun's face remained completely expressionless. "Don't tell my father about receiving the certificate yet," he said. I had to temporarily give up my ambitions and status. "You'd better prepare a convincing explanation for him in advance. Do you understand me?" I bowed my head silently, showing no emotion. Uncle Jai Yun is going to help Song Jinyan go to Beidai. The irony of fate, I'm about to get a marriage certificate with a man I don't love at all. What happiness. Jinyan is still too young to be subjected to such emotional shocks. It's better not to mention this certificate to him at all. "And you apologized yesterday. Why couldn't you say this earlier?" "Don't wait for me to start the conversation. Uncle Jai Yun is getting tougher and tougher. Jinyan is leaving for Beidai soon. Give him some tickets, including a train ticket." What a truly great blessing. Wherever you look, you can see how much Jai Yunshu cares for Song Jinyan. Everything inside me froze, as if I was clutching a cold stone in my hands. I can't breathe anymore. Do they really think I still have these damn tickets? He lacks warmth and love, neither from me nor from my parents. Jai Yunshu freezes in surprise. This sight is eerily reminiscent of my own situation. The topic of true feelings and attachments turns out to be too confusing. "Don't worry, since I promised to marry you, I'm not going to back down." It seemed that for Jai Yunshu, marriage was the only way to somehow console me. "Sister Yunshu, are you really going to marry your cousin?" A voice comes from the side. Jai Yunshu's expression instantly changed. She turned sharply toward the door. Song Jinyan stands in the doorway, his fingers gripping the frame. His face is deathly pale, and his expression is distorted with pain and despair. It's not that Jai Yunshu hasn't explained anything to anyone yet. Song Jinyan seems to be losing his mind. He slams his head against the wall, his face contorted in agony. "I don't want my sister to marry my cousin. I love my sister too," Song Jinyan shouts, causing me a lot of pain. Jai Yunshu rushes towards him in panic. Pushing me aside, he carefully picks up Song Jinyan in his arms. The parents, who had arrived in time, immediately rushed after them, looking at Song Jinyan with horror. Panicked, the three of them rushed Song Jinyan to the hospital as quickly as possible. Just before leaving, Jai Yunshu casts a chilling glance at me. There's a reproach in his eyes. You saw that, right? You were deliberately provoking Jinyan, weren't you? I never thought you were capable of such meanness. I feel sick from the disgust and contempt that can be seen in Jai Yunshu's gaze. My heart inside is squeezing, as if under the blows of a heavy hammer. What is Song Jinyan really trying to achieve? The thought makes me sad. The whole family revolves around him again, and in the end it turns out that I'm the only one to blame. Jai Yunshu's furious and accusatory gaze is still before my eyes. I repeat to myself in my mind, stop grieving over a person who doesn't love you anymore. But the heart in my chest is still dull and hurts unbearably. I already look at all these little manipulations of Song Jinyan with bitter irony. Previously, Jai Yunshu could not have imagined that their family would indulge Song Jinyan's every whim. I remember the moment when I was at the very bottom of despair. It was he who once entered this house and took me with him. And he strictly ordered the entire court that no one should dare to offend or intimidate me in the future. In those days, Jai Yunshu was incredibly kind to me, but I didn't even notice at what exact moment Jai Yunshu changed beyond recognition. Over time, the dull hatred towards Song Jinyan turned into a dull mental pain. Song Jinyan became a fatal star for me, bringing only misfortune. He always knew how to take away from me everything that was most precious. I look at the departing car with cold contempt. That was the last time I allowed myself to feel sad about Jai Yunshu. And the last time my heart ached with longing for this strange and uncomfortable home. From now on, I will live exclusively for myself. It's time to use my youth for my own future. I return to my room and start cleaning the small balcony. An old battered box catches your eye. Inside, all the gifts that Uncle Jai Yun once gave me are neatly stacked. A large, handcrafted wooden toy and a delicate little thing that resembles a dry autumn leaf. I used to treasure each of these gifts as if they were the greatest treasure. Parting with them seemed unbearable, but now it all lost all meaning and turned into ordinary trash. Having sorted everything out completely, I take the memorabilia out into the yard to burn them. All the past feelings and attachments towards Uncle Jai Yun find their end in the purifying flame. When the last of the things burn out, Uncle Jai Yun unexpectedly returns to the courtyard. Noticing the blazing fire and burning wooden figures, he freezes in place. His face instantly changes, and an animal fear flares up in his chest. Uncle Jai Yun's voice breaks and trembles with rising panic. He can't believe his eyes. Su Yuan, these are the very gifts I gave you. Why did you burn them? It seems like the familiar world around him is starting to collapse and spiral out of control. Let him panic as much as he wants. I just watch the burning remains with indifference. I wait until the fire has completely consumed the wood to black coals, and then slowly turn my back to it. At this moment, my gaze remains frighteningly calm and empty. Jai Yunshu seems to be beginning to realize that the man in front of him has changed forever. I let him go, and at that very moment, when the gifts turned to ashes, I could finally breathe freely. A new, unshakable determination is born in the very depths of my heart. I am no longer burdened by the toxic love of my parents who. There's no more torment. I no longer care who Jai Yunshu cares about or to whom he devotes his time. I will go my own way, and the past is irretrievably lost. Since everything was destroyed, burning the remains was the only right decision. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I want to be brutally honest with Jai Yunshu. Let him know straight out that I don't have any feelings for him anymore. But there are still a little more than 20 days left until the cherished day of my disappearance. This means that I will have to endure the presence of Jai Yunshu, who has become an unbearable burden for me for a little longer. My nerves are a little frayed, but that's okay. Burning the past was worth it because it wasn't worth anything anyway. After all, new things can be purchased later, after receiving the coveted certificate. Although I smile bitterly to myself, fully understanding that we will not have any certificate. We have no future together, Uncle Jai Yun soberly assesses the situation. I simply had no choice but to rely on him. There's nowhere to run. All this current torment and worry now seems like unnecessary stupidity. Jai Yunshu is still as tall and handsome in appearance as if he were the incarnation of a deity. But this world is already in ruins, so why waste time on unnecessary embarrassment? After the loss of his parents, Jinyan has been in poor health and is seriously ill. He is contraindicated in any worries because I supposedly have everything one could dream of. There is no need to start unnecessary quarrels. I can only counter this thought with a bitter smile with a slight hint of sarcasm. The care goes to my bride, they even buy her decent dresses. Meanwhile, Song Jinyin took away absolutely everything that rightfully belonged to me. What else do you want? Uncle Jai Yun looks at me with obvious hostility. But I'm not upset, don't you have parents yourself? Meanwhile, I Jin Nayan am lying in the hospital. You should apologize, I hear, and at first I think I just misheard. It is obvious that Song Jin Nayan's depression is just a cheap game and pretense. But everyone around stubbornly pretends not to notice anything. I'm furious, he's taken over my parents' company. And you will still take care of me since there are so many medical personnel around. Do you think I need you to leave here? Uncle Jai Yun starts to boil with anger. Why are you so completely without empathy? Jin Nayan's depression is entirely your fault. No matter what happens, this cousin must always be the center of attention. You still haven't realized your own mistake. It seems they've all gotten too used to blaming me for everything. Yizu Yuan, don't say you didn't have a chance if you don't go to the hospital immediately. Let's not rush into getting this certificate just yet. Having said these words, I quickly leave. It turns out they're openly blackmailing me with this testimony. But now I am ready to obey them unquestioningly. I didn't care anymore at all. I silently got into the car and drove away. Uncle Jai Yun's face remained icy and calm. Upon returning home, I immediately began packing my things to leave once and for all. But in the end, I just found myself another big house. On such a dark night, absolutely everything can be taken away from me. When I returned home, my parents greeted me with angry expressions. Apparently, Song Jin Nayan had managed to say something nasty about me again. Soon my mother came to see me. With a stern face, she blurted out, "Su Yuan, how could you frame Yun Shu? Jin Nayan also developed feelings for him. Because of you, he almost committed suicide in the hospital. He's your cousin, and that should be the most important thing in the world to you." Only then did I fully realize the extent of Song Jin Nayan's madness, turning him into an innocent victim in my mother's eyes. But I never expected that all these lies would be so shameless. My mother's words cut across my face like a merciless cold wind in the middle of summer. My face was completely numb from shock. Looking my mother straight in the eyes, I croaked in a voice dry from tears, "Mom, actually, I'm your biological son. But you yourself have been saying for years that you dream of sending me far away." "I agree, but tell me, has there been a single new thing in this house for me personally over all these years? Even meat on the festive table. Even on New Year's Eve, they never gave me a normal room. I never intended to go north, but now you're all so unanimous in your desire to get rid of me. He wants my life, then take it, I'll rip my own heart out. Mom, am I your son after all or what?" I am absolutely no longer able to contain the pent-up rage. By sending greetings and hitting the sick person with a backhand, the hostess of the house seemed to give me a resounding slap in the face. Uncle Jai Yun's face only expressed deep disappointment, and this is your own cousin. Just because you lost your father, you decide that everyone owes you something. Your father was right, you really do not know how to be grateful. This time you have to leave him alone. Otherwise, you're no longer my son. Having hurled these cruel words at me, my mother turned away. I leaned my shoulder against the doorframe, and the blazing sun overhead seemed like a cruel, mocking joke. How happy they were at that moment in their blind unanimity. Soon after, Jai Yunshu returned to the courtyard. The door closed, darkness fell, and my heart felt incredibly lousy. Our leader was late, but I no longer felt like arguing. In fact, the pent-up disappointment was so intense that it didn't even evoke tears. I felt desperately embarrassed for taking all this too seriously. Okay, Jai Yunshu clearly didn't expect me to avoid causing a scene, and he agreed surprisingly quickly. I froze for a moment, confused, not looking at Jai Yunshu himself or the shadows of others outside the courtyard. I remember the past. When I was 11, Song Jin Nayan cleverly set everyone up again. My own parents hung me up by my arms and beat me almost to death. Choking with despair, I wandered home and cried bitterly under the spreading yutun tree. It was then that Jai Yunshu passed by, smiling tenderly, laughing, and affectionately walking me all the way home. At that moment, he seemed to me to be the only ray of light that illuminated my pitch darkness. With him by my side, I had hoped for a normal life. Jai Yunshu sincerely believed and wanted me to enter Peking University and make my dream come true. That is why, when college entrance exams resumed in 1978, I worked hard day and night and finally earned a diploma from Peking University. I sincerely believed that I could walk hand in hand with Jai Yunshu all my life, that we would be together forever. but now everything around seemed like an illusion, like a flower in a mirror or the moon in water. The image of Jai Yunshu in my eyes was completely destroyed. Step by step, he forced me to make humiliating compromises, just so Song Jin Nyan could enter Peking University, sacrificing my future. And they call this loveless marriage a great sacrifice. When Uncle Jai Yun announced that we would have to postpone our marriage registration, I remained absolutely calm because I didn't expect anything more from him. I used to think that a delay in getting a marriage certificate would ruin all my plans. I was afraid of losing my studies, and Uncle Jai Yun would never marry me in the end. But now all that has lost its meaning. Luckily, I secured a place at Northern University in time. In just 20 days, I will leave this damned, pain-filled place forever. I'm going to the National Defense University to break all ties with this family once and for all. Su Yuan, don't bother your head with unnecessary thoughts, he said to me. Since I promised to marry you, I will keep my word. But all of these are just excuses due to Jin Nyan's unstable psyche. He's simply afraid of provoking his cousin's hysterics once again. Uncle Jai Yun sees that I am being quiet and not demanding anything, so he allows himself to continue to manipulate me. Although I've been sick of making excuses to him for a long time now. Glancing at the unfamiliar tree in the yard, I suddenly asked quietly, "Sister, do you remember what you promised me back when I was 11, right under this tree?" Jai Yunshu's face suddenly turned pale, and a vague memory flashed in his eyes. Some drunkard took a sip of wine, but just before the security arrived, the police were already rushing there. The hospital brought further alarming news that Jin Nyan had tried to harm himself again. Jai Yunshu frowned, waved his hand at the phone, and could no longer sit still. Turning sharply, he rushed to the car and drove off after that very distant jeep. I silently turned around and returned to my empty room. There was actually almost nothing of mine left on that narrow balcony. All the gifts once given to Jai Yunshu have already turned to ashes. Except for a few worn-out clothes and my own broken life, I have nothing left here. My biological parents gave me absolutely nothing in my entire life. Everything I tried to save or give to my loved ones, they dragged to Song Jinyan without alternative. Jai Yunshu was absent from home for a whole week. All this time, he and his parents were constantly on duty at Song Jin Nyan's hospital bed. And thank God I even felt calm. I didn't need to see Song Jin Nyan's disgusting face. And once again, endure the false views of prejudiced parents. Instead, I started seeing Jai Jiangguo regularly to improve my physical fitness. It was excellent preparation for the rigors of life at the National Defense University. Since I'd chosen this path, many dangers and difficult trials await me in the future. Jai Jiangguo just patted me on the shoulder approvingly. "You're on the right track, boy." The conservative mores of this family no longer have power over me. Another week has passed. Today, I've been training right in the yard since early morning. My body is covered in beads of sweat, but inside I feel incredibly light and energized. I cut my hair short, leaving just a neat strand. Jai Yunshu once mentioned that he liked guys with a bit of creative chaos in their appearance. Now that's a thing of the past. I used to wear my hair in a style that suited the image of an intelligent young man, but now that's over. I'm not going to adjust to anyone anymore. I live exclusively for myself. As soon as I got my hair cut short, I felt like a real person for the first time in a long time. Jai Jiangguo looked at me after the haircut and chuckled approvingly. "Now you can see the true soldier's temperament." Although Jai Jiangguo himself didn't fully know how deeply my heart was wounded. He understood everything perfectly well without any unnecessary words, so he didn't ask any questions or stop me. Ultimately, adults are free to deal with their youth themselves. True, he has an old acquaintance, a stern warrior named Tiangxin, whose methods sometimes give off a whiff of primeval savagery. Tiangxin spent many years carrying out dangerous secret missions abroad, and his life is difficult to describe in polite words. But if I ever needed a reliable support, he promised to give me strong support. Finally, relative calm had arrived, if only because Song Jinyan's familiar little world was once again cracking at the seams. While in the yard, I calmly go about my business. Out of the corner of my eye, I watch my parents and Uncle Jai Yun. Song Jinyan always has an aura of seeming fragility around him, although in reality he is a master at manipulating those around him. Song Jinyan is now constantly staying close to Uncle Jai Yang. Their relationship seems surprisingly close, and my parents demonstratively pretend not to notice this piquant nuance. However, they are sincerely happy with any result, and Jai Yunshu himself does not object to such company at all. Feeling my gaze, they immediately turn around. It's as if they're saying to me, just try to ruin something. Well, go ahead, try it yourself. Song Jinyin, feigning resentment, immediately begins to play to the audience. Sister, do you really dislike me that much? Jai Yunshu is noticeably confused and flustered by his attacks. He has no choice but to gently reassure Song Jinyin, after which they both disappear into the house. At the threshold, Song Jinyin casts a long glance at me, full of undisguised provocation and venomous mockery. But I remain frighteningly calm. It seems that this group of 4 people doesn't care about me at all, and thank God I'm getting back to my training. Time flies by unnoticed while I am completely immersed in the process. After finishing another approach, I take a deep, measured breath. The cool evening wind barely touches my skin, and I close my eyes for a moment, enjoying this rare moment of silence in the middle of the stuffy courtyard. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the shuffling sound of footsteps coming from the direction of the house, making me wary. I open my eyes and see Jai Yunshu holding some magazine in her hands. A shadow of slight panic flickered across his face. Apparently, he had just tried unsuccessfully to calm down another of Song Jinyin's hysterics. Apparently, he stumbled upon that same National Defense University brochure on my bed. Judging by his tense posture, he feels extremely uncomfortable. That's why he came down into the yard to find me and talk to me. What is this brochure from the National Defense University? He finally forces out the question. Faced with his interrogation, I remain absolutely icy calm and make no excuses. I silently take a towel to wipe the sweat from my forehead. Are you seriously considering going there? Jai Yunshu's voice rang with a strange worry, as if he was trying to wrest something important from me. My body goes numb for a second, as if I'm at risk of losing the last thread connecting me to my past life. That same fragile handle that I had tried unsuccessfully to hold on to countless times. But now there is no trembling or painful hesitation left in my heart. I just smile bitterly, looking him straight in the eyes. Jai Yunshu peers into my face, trying to find any falsehood, but sees only the frightening truth. And I myself understand that I no longer intend to lie to myself for the sake of someone else's convenience. As if throwing an unbearable burden off my shoulders, I nod to him in response. Nothing special really, it's just that my current health and condition, in your opinion, are still not suitable for a military academy. Shouldn't I listen to your advice and continue cramming my textbooks, so I can try to storm a regular civilian college again next year? After all, according to you, I have pretty good grades. I look at him challengingly. I wonder if I even have any chance left to live my own life. What do you think? My parents told me to go to work after the summer holidays to earn a living on my own. My cousin was studying at the time, and soon he left altogether. Jai Yunshu sometimes seems so timid and childish. Apparently noticing how my face had changed, he softened his tone. Don't worry, I will never let you go to work. Don't worry about the money, I've already prepared the required amounts. This is quite enough for Jinyin to study in peace. I smile bitterly to myself. Just look at how much Jai Yunshu cares about Song Jinyin. For him, this guy is a whole universe. For his sake, he not only made me drop out of school, but also prepared all the study materials himself. It must be admitted that this family knows how to be happy at someone else's expense. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch the panic in Jai Yunshu's eyes. But I clearly understand, this is not at all a manifestation of sincere love for me. I stubbornly continue to remain silent. Luckily, I don't care anymore. Noticing my silence, Uncle Jai Yun decides I'm just jealous. He reaches out to stroke my head but stops when he bumps into my short-cropped locks. My new image doesn't fit at all with the gentle boy he's used to. I don't know why, but it's easier for me this way. Physically, I'm still here in the yard, but in my soul it's as if there's no trace of me. Feeling that he was finally losing control over me, he quickly blurts out, "I'll marry you. Just trust me. We just need to wait a little while." Uncle Jai Yun's firm voice left no doubt. If this had happened earlier, I probably would have been jumping for joy. But now I only say a few soft words, keeping a completely empty and speechless expression on my face. This calmness only makes Uncle Jai Yun more anxious. From the second-floor balcony, Song Jinyin silently watches the two of us below. A dark, deep resentment was frozen in his eyes. I started going to bed as early as possible, largely because I just got sick of looking at them. The parents of a child suffering from heart failure are extremely worried about Song Jinyin's condition. And from the grueling daytime workouts, I was falling off my feet from fatigue. The next morning, I left the house under the pretext of going to school. But in the quiet of the office, a man in a strict suit of a discreet European cut was already waiting for me. He literally exuded cold steel and iron discipline. Next to him, you involuntarily straighten up and feel collected. The guest introduced himself as a professor of a secret specialty at the National Defense University. This time, he has a special mission. He has come to personally pick me up at the educational institution. The specifics of this secret area at the Defense University are extremely unusual. Enrollment is through an accelerated admissions process, so I don't have to go through the standard bureaucratic hoops. Without unnecessary official notifications and noise. All the necessary paperwork has already been completed directly from the university walls. I'm about to go to a closed, secret location for service and training. It's time to do my duty. An officer from the Defense University looks at me with approval. I'll be back at school for you in a week, so get ready. I remember this man in a formal suit, and I understand that this is my chance. This is exactly what I craved most. Hard work and a new life lay ahead. Perhaps there, far away in the wilderness, I will finally become who I always wanted to be. Even though my blood family is cold and indifferent, I have nothing left for them except emptiness. But I sincerely hope that after I enter the National Defense University, someday in the future I will be able to look down on this courtyard. I return to this damned yard as a completely different person, and close this chapter for myself forever. When I return to the yard, when I return to the yard, when I get back 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 to the yard, when I return to the yard, when I get back to the yard, when I get back to the yard. When I stepped into this courtyard again, Song Jinyan, as before, tried to irritate me. He looked at me angrily and laughed loudly, expecting my violent reaction. But at that moment, I remained frighteningly calm. My indifference felt to him like a fist hitting a soft pillow. This made his face distort with anger. Song Jinyan really didn't like my indifference. All my thoughts that day revolved around the very promise that Jai Yunshu gave me downstairs. Song Jinyan's eyes were literally blinded by insane jealousy. Even his own suicide attempt then only helped him temporarily postpone my explanations. He had long since stopped controlling himself and his emotions. He made caustic jokes to try to hurt me, but my icy behavior only added fuel to the fire of his jealousy. Song Jinyan completely lost his mind. He pulled me towards him sharply and hissed in my ear in an icy voice. "You pushed me on purpose out of envy and jealousy, admit it. And who will they believe after this?" This cynicism made me feel unbearably ashamed of him. Before I could even push him away, Song Jinyan suddenly rushed forward and flew from the second floor. "Help, save me, don't kill me," he screamed hysterically as he flew. Before he fell, Song Jinyan deliberately hit his head against the wall. I fell from the second floor with a dull thud, my whole body hitting the hard concrete floor. The pain was so intense that I instantly lost the ability to breathe. Song Jinyan's screams immediately set his parents and Jai Yunshu, who had arrived, into action. All three of them flew up like a whirlwind, rushing to assess the scale of the tragedy. I was immediately forbidden to even try to justify myself. My father stepped on my stomach in anger. "Are you completely crazy? How could you do this to Jin Nyan?" I screamed, looking into my parents' faces. All the words of justification stuck in my throat instantly lost all meaning. I just closed my eyes tightly. My heart was breaking with unbearable pain. "I never thought your soul was so callous," the accusations poured out. "You're ready to kill out of envy. You have proven yourself more despicable than any street scum. I don't have a son like that anymore." The mother burst into tears, her eyes bloodshot with hatred. She looked at me as if I was her worst enemy, and I instinctively recoiled. The mother hugged the moaning Song Jinyan and cried bitterly over him. "Forgive me, I was just gone for a second." Song Jinyan continued to play out the play. "I never expected to cause so much trouble. Jin Yang, my dear, be patient. I'll take you to the hospital now." Jai Yunshu fussed, his face smeared with fake blood. From the outside, everything looked incredibly creepy and serious, although in reality these were only superficial scratches. All their worries and concerns were given exclusively to this manipulator. But from a position where those three couldn't see me, I slowly raised my head and gave them all a sinister, cold smile. After all, it was he who threw himself from the second floor for the sake of another performance. And although I was physically in much more pain than he was, this whole situation evoked only dull contempt. I was kicked roughly again, causing me to bend over in a shrimp pose. But the physical pain at that moment was nothing compared to the scorched emptiness in my heart. My own parents will never believe me in their lives, and any attempts to tell the truth have now lost all meaning. They are ready to blindly and unconditionally believe every word Song Jinyan says. A few minutes later, I struggle to my feet. My face is completely white, devoid of any color. My body is shaking slightly, but I look straight at Jai Yunshu with an icy expression. Meanwhile, Song Jinyan is ostentatiously feeling sorry for himself and crying bitterly in public. "Cousin, forgive me, I warned you that I was not worth your trouble," he laments. "Since I'm a burden to you, I know how much you hate me. If my death will bring you happiness, I am ready to give you this life. Just please don't upset my aunt, uncle, and sister because of me." I silently watch this circus created by Song Jinyan, and behind his back I see the faces of my own parents, distorted with rage. Once again, impenetrable darkness and suffocating despair roll over me. However, I have long since become accustomed to loneliness and pain. Mentally, I have long since erased these people from my life. I no longer need such relatives who only give off mortal cold. Why does Song Jinyan keep going through this farce of self-harm again and again? Flashes through my mind. But instead of answering, Jai Yunshu suddenly turns around and gives me a crushing slap in the face. "I told you clearly about our certificate," he shouts. "Why did you try to hurt Jinyan? Can't you see how upset he is already? Did you really want him dead?" The blow darkens his vision and his cheek burns. A trickle of blood flows from the broken mouth, the body broken by the fall stings. I look at Jai Yunshu and suddenly realize that he is no different from my parents. No evidence, no logic, they blindly trust only Song Jinyan. In their eyes, I am by default assigned as the main and most terrible villain. Initially, I still wanted to explain something to Jai Yunshu, naively hoping that there was still a drop of common sense left in him. Now, any attempt to justify myself seems disgustingly stupid to me. Jai Yunshu shakes his head in disgust, his face distorted with deep disappointment. "And how could I seriously intend to get this certificate with you? Isekai, you have greatly disappointed me." Having abandoned this, they finally stop paying attention to me and carefully seat Song Jinyan in the car. Before slamming the door, Song Jinyan turns and takes a long look at me. That same grin plays on his lips, exactly the smile of a demon who has escaped from hell. I watch the car drive away, feeling the last of my strength leaving me. I vomit blood onto the cold ground. It's a piercing, angry night outside. I come to my senses after a while. My whole body is numb from cold and pain. Somehow making it to my room, I collapse onto my bed and lie motionless for several hours, trying to put myself back together. I'm barely treating the bruises and scrapes. The night chill penetrates my bones, but it's nothing compared to the icy indifference of my loved ones. The way my parents and Uncle Jai Yun treated me left a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest the size of an abyss. My already destroyed inner world is completely collapsing. I feel like an abandoned, beaten puppy who, all alone, licks his torn wounds on a dark balcony. The tears had long since dried up, and inside there remained only a ringing emptiness and absolute numbness. There is only one simple thought beating in my head, devoid of any emotion. I desperately want time to speed up. I can't stand being in this house for even a single extra second. This fake cold-soaked house, like a giant octopus, ready at any moment to drag me to the bottom and devour me whole. Lying on the hard bed, I stare blankly at the black night sky. I don't even have time to fully fall asleep when I'm rudely pulled out of the darkness, doused from head to toe with ice-cold water. Before I can even open my eyes, a powerful force jerks me out of bed. I was dragged into the living room. My parents and Uncle Jai Yun had already returned from the hospital, bringing Song Jinyan with them. And this despite the fact that he had nothing but a couple of light scratches on his skin. But in the eyes of these people, any action of mine is already an unforgivable crime. My father delivers a powerful, crushing kick to my chest. His face distorted with anger, immediately kneel down and beg Jinyan for forgiveness. "Otherwise you will not see my forgiveness. You are no longer my son." The icy atmosphere of this madhouse reigns all around, where everyone unanimously pretends that they are innocent victims. My heart is completely broken into pieces. I stare blankly at their angry faces, to the sincere hatred in the eyes of the parents, at the deep disappointment frozen on Uncle Jai Yun's face, and at the vile, triumphant grin on Song Jinyan's face. All these people are my blood relatives, but they hit me harder and more accurately than any enemies. It torments the soul so much that it seems as if an open enemy next door would be much safer. It's obvious that this whole circus is just another cheap production by Song Jinyan, but I'm the one being forced to kneel. If only humiliation and public repentance could change anything or save the remains of this family, I would probably agree to this compromise, but now I hate the very thought of having anything to do with them to the point of nausea. For what sins was I born in this heartless, poison-soaked house? My father continues to curse me, calling me a fiend from hell, and kicks me again. Then Uncle Jai Yun spoke up, standing up from his seat. "Enough, can't you see? I freeze for a second, internally clinging to this illusory straw, and I catch Jai Yunshu's habitually cold, slightly narrowed gaze. For a moment, I think he'll try to intervene, remembering everything that happened between us. He probably wants to propose some kind of fair punishment to close this issue. He actually stops his father, shaking his head slightly. Enough, there's no need to get so upset. My heart skips a beat with foolish hope. I'm a fool for thinking that Jai Yunshu would stand up for me. But his next words sound so absurd that I want to burst out laughing right in their faces. Jai Yunshu frowns, avoiding looking me in the eyes. I've figured it out about you. You're no longer right for me. If it weren't for Jinyan's miraculous rescue, your antics would have driven the man to his death. As punishment for your cruelty, we are officially postponing our wedding. First, I will marry Jinyan to at least somehow make amends to him and calm his heart. I can't stand it any longer and look at Jai Yunshu with a long, piercing gaze. And this is what they call punishment. Jai Yunshu notices my venomous, sarcastic gaze and becomes slightly embarrassed. A shadow of shame and hidden anger flickers in his eyes, but he quickly pulls himself together. I'm only doing this to make amends to Jinyan. My parents and Jai Yunshu himself look down on me, expecting me to obey. I instinctively take a step back, feeling a suffocating wave of rage rise inside me, capable of destroying everything in its path. Unfortunately for them, I have no intention of repenting. I no longer hold back my anger. Instead, I smile widely, eerily, and spit a thick drop of blood onto the floor. How noble of you. Congratulations, my warmest wishes to my dear cousin and my soon-to-be fiancé. Have you finished your farce yet? If there are no more questions, I'll go to my room. I need to rest. Stumbling as I walk from the pain in my bruised legs, I hobble towards my room. I hate even to breathe the same air with them. I don't want to see their lying faces anymore. Song Jinyan immediately pretended to be offended. Cousin, are you really not even going to come to our wedding? It may be just a formality, but it is so important for us. I would be extremely happy if you would do me a favor and bless us. His father barks furiously after him. Don't worry about that ungrateful bastard. Whether he wants it or not, I'll make him come crawling. This scoundrel thinks he can get away with his vile actions. My mother yells at my back. If you don't show up there in person, you can pack your things and get out of this house forever. Jai Yunshu is silent, lost in his thoughts. Apparently, he himself does not really understand why this situation causes him such a vague internal discomfort. As usual, no one pays any attention to me. In their eyes, I am just an eternal cause for envy and reproach. A dull unease stirred in his chest. Is he really going to marry Song Jinyan? Although they insist that this is just an empty formality, deep down, he still sincerely believes that I am simply furious with jealousy. He thinks that if he bends me now, I will finally learn my lesson, and that even after this wedding, he will supposedly still have a loophole to replay everything back. He tries to talk to me with a chuckle, but that forced smile on his face cuts me to the quick like a splinter in the very heart. Why did he even think he had the right to do this to me? These three people don't give a damn about me. They wouldn't even blink if I fell off a cliff right now and died. Whether I die or run away to the ends of the earth, they don't care at all. Ironically, deep down I still care about that damn family. After all, I loved this Jai Yunshu so long and blindly. The next 3 days drag on endlessly, and I don't even have anywhere to go. I decide not to argue and just stay home, methodically healing my broken bruises. Meanwhile, the parents and Jai Yunshu, with dazzling smiles, are busily preparing for the upcoming celebration. They decided to hold the wedding at the most prestigious hotel by that time, the Boyan Hotel. For ordinary people of that time, this was unimaginably luxurious. In order to please Song Jinyan's whims, my parents are ready to work their ass off to earn money by any means necessary. But as soon as the wedding date came to an end, I hurried to pack my few things. I'm waiting for the officers from the National Defense University to arrive, while my parents and Song Jinyan have already left for Boeing to greet the guests. Jai Yunshu is wearing a formal uniform rather than a traditional suit for the occasion. Before leaving, he comes up to me and condescendingly says, "Su Yuan, you remember the condition. This wedding with Jinyan is just an empty formality. This isn't a real marriage certificate. Don't worry, in the end I'm still only going to marry you." Jai Yunshu sincerely considers himself an incredibly noble and kind person. He comforted me in the same way many years ago when, at the age of 11, my parents kicked me out of the house for the first time. Then I was squatting in the cold garden in front of the porch, and it was he who gave me hope, vowing that he would never abandon me. But how much water has flowed under the bridge since then? Jai Yunshu has changed beyond recognition, and I am now frighteningly calm and balanced. He was afraid until the very end that I would create a huge scandal for them at the banquet today. And I was sure that his exemplary punishment would teach me something. Probably in his fantasies after this, I should have become much more obedient. That is why he insisted until the very end that I come to the Boyan Hotel. But he never saw on my face the pain and jealousy that he so longed to see. My heart inside turned into a scorched desert, but I responded to every word of his evenly and indifferently. It was as if the person standing in front of me was not the person I once loved, but a complete stranger, a stranger passing by. A man from a completely different, unfamiliar world. However, Jai Yunshu himself did everything to get me out of the house, forcing me to mind my own business. Judging by the calls, there was very little time left before the start of the banquet at the hotel. Jai Yunshu was too nervous to wait any longer for my consent, throwing out on the fly that I had to show up at the ceremony, otherwise he would cancel all the arrangements. He left. As I watch his car disappear, I feel neither anger nor resentment, only a dull weariness. I threw on my jacket and went out into the yard, zipping it up tightly. Jai Yunshu's car had just disappeared around the corner when an army jeep from the National Defense University silently drove straight into the courtyard. The officer who came out looked at me sternly and asked if I was ready to finally say goodbye to my family. I slowly turned around and took a farewell look at that damned yard. The place where I spent 15 years dying alive from pain and loneliness. I don't want to stay here for a second longer, not for the sake of indifferent parents. Not for the sake of the bride who betrayed me. I feel disgusted even to look in that direction. Without the slightest hesitation, I quickly get into an army jeep and drive away in the direction of the Defense University. From this moment on, my old personality will be erased forever. A lifelong hidden service will begin, to which I will dedicate the entire second half of my journey. I am no longer someone's son or someone's fake fiancé. I refuse these roles. From now on, I will live only for myself and the well-being of my country. A Defense University car smoothly passes the festively decorated Boyan Hotel. Through the glass, I see the smartly dressed guests and the happy faces of the families at the main entrance. My parents and the radiant Song Jinyan. They stand there with beaming smiles, and Jai Yunshu, standing next to them, looks proud and pleased. They're all eagerly awaiting this farce. From the outside, these foursomes seem like the perfect picture of family bliss. Our car picks up speed and slowly moves further away. The Boyan Hotel and the four figures finally dissolve into the distance, disappearing from my field of vision. Finally, I am starting my own clean life. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the hotel, Jai Yunshu was suddenly struck by a strange, sticky feeling of anxiety. He looks back, following with his gaze the now empty road where the car had just passed. Without realizing it, he feels his heart beating unpleasantly and anxiously in his chest. The parents laughingly accept congratulations from the guests. All you hear is talk about how incredibly lucky Song Jinyan is. Not only did he successfully pass all his exams, but also got the most enviable and brilliant officer as a husband. Jai Yunshu sheepishly averts his eyes from the crowd. Trying to drown out the vague inner voice, he convinces himself that all this is just a temporary farce. After all, he took this step solely out of pity, to help Song Jinyan cope with his imaginary illness. Listening to the flattering speeches of the guests, he frowns. Song Jinyan, however, is jubilant. He demonstratively presses himself against Jai Yunshu and demonstratively searches for him with his eyes in the crowd. "Oh, listen, why isn't my cousin among the guests?" he asks, feigning surprise. "Didn't he promise to come and bless us personally? Maybe he's still mad at me. I didn't mean to ruin our holiday, if only I'd known. I guess I should have knelt before him again and begged for forgiveness." Song Jinyan immediately feigns a masterful look of misery. His father's face instantly turns purple with anger. This ungrateful bastard simply doesn't deserve to be treated like a human being. How I regret that I ever gave birth to him. He's not even worth Jin Nyan's little finger. The mother nods in agreement, bowing humbly to the guests. Su Yuan is completely wild and ill-mannered. He even regretted showing up at his cousin's own wedding. He was always bullying poor Jin Nyan, as if he wasn't in enough pain already. And a couple of days ago, he almost drove him to suicide. But it's okay, he'll come back. We'll quickly set his mind straight and make him work off this disgrace. All the complaints and insults from parents come down to one familiar scenario. In the face of Jin Nyan's suffering, they revel in their own righteousness. Song Jinyan, having noticed the desired effect, pretends to be bothered by it. "Oh, is my sister really mad at me? I never intended to take his beloved away from him once and for all." I just wanted to fulfill my cherished dream of a wedding for a little while. If cousin is so angry, then after the banquet I can bring his sister back. Although no, it's better not to. Let's not spoil such a beautiful fairy tale. These cheap manipulations once again ignite fanatical approval in the parents' eyes. They can't even begin to imagine the unbearable pain I went through. Listening to their dirty curses directed at me, Song Jinyin felt triumphant in his heart. And Jai Yunshu, standing a little to the side, absent-mindedly looks at the empty horizon. So much time has passed, but the vague anxiety in the depths of his heart only becomes more unbearable. I didn't agree to this wedding at all in order to marry Song Jinyin. I was driven only by the desire to meet the other side halfway. Jai Yunshu thinks that I shouldn't be so petty. I can understand him because human lives are subject to heaven. But my reflection doesn't leave my head, directing its gaze towards the wedding celebration. I haven't even had time to arrive yet. Jai Yunshu loses his patience and leaves. Song Jinyin hurries to stop her sister with a question. Are you going to leave me? Jai Yunshu turns around, and a cold expression appears on Song Jinyin's face. At that moment, Song Jinyin was deeply shocked. I've had enough of trying to pretend I'm sad. It was extremely rare for him to see Jai Yunshu's frightening face. Jai Yunshu is overcome with extreme distress. I can't shake the feeling that something bad has happened. There is an insistent voice inside me. I must go back. I want to pick up Jai Yunshu, but this time she didn't pay any attention to Song Jinyin. Don't you dare leave on the way back. He was calm, but he had to explain everything to me. Technically, we're not married, but it's time to fix that. With incredible speed, I returned to the yard and rushed to the gate. Ziyu, go out to the balcony and stop being angry. Everyone is waiting for you, and Jai Yunshu is the first to pull back the curtain. This small balcony initially seemed narrow and damp. Now cleanliness and order reign here. A folded bed is thrown into the corner, and in the center stands only a modest study table. The song is somewhere halfway through, and a note has frozen in place. I don't need this house anymore. Jai Yunshu will never see this again. Only 2 short lines remain. It hits you hard, straight to the heart. Jai Yunshu is forced to suppress the panic in her chest, conducting an internal dialogue with herself. Zhu Yuan must be just joking. In his opinion, I have nowhere to go because I cannot bear separation from my parents and from him. Jai Yunshu knows my character very well. I have suffered for so many years, and now I only want one thing: to stay close to my parents. I miss their warmth and love so much. However, everything that appears before his eyes plunges him into wild awe. Jai Yunshu stares out into the courtyard. As time goes by, the full horror of what is happening dawns on him. The very traces of my existence evaporated when I was 15. I planted flowers in the garden for him that looked like sea sand. At 17, I offered prayers for his well-being. The red ribbon that fluttered on the swing in the yard disappeared without a trace. Uncle Jian quickly heads towards the yudong tree that grows behind the courtyard. He remembers that I loved spending time, most of all in the shade of its branches. Deep in the earth, I buried the deepest secrets of my soul. My deepest desires, my parents' recognition, and my tender love for Uncle Jian. All this is hidden under a layer of dirt at the roots of the yutan. I see a veil of screen in front of me. Uncle Jian was shattered into pieces as if struck by thunder. The earth was dug up, the clay jug was broken. And inside it there's only a pile of cold, ashy ash. It was at this moment that Uncle Jian finally realized the depth of the impending disaster. I actually left Uncle Jian to while away his days alone under the yudong tree. Staring at this pile of ashes, I have already met my own end. But no one cared about the child, whom no one loved and who died in complete despair. I burned the very gift he gave me. Having destroyed all the bright memories, I disappeared step by step into the smokeless night. Jai Yunshu had just married Song Jinyin at that time. We were just going to meet each other's wishes, and I didn't warn anyone about my departure at all. Jai Yunshu still can't comprehend what is happening. He only feels how the air, saturated with salt, has become heavy and still. The heart is painfully compressed by a heavy premonition. A scorching wind drives forward the colorless night haze. Jai Yunshu suddenly lifts his head, as if noticing something elusive. This is the same child whose relatives abandoned him under the tree. Crying bitterly, he stretches out his hand, laughing that from now on this dark night, he would no longer be afraid and lonely. In the glow of the cool moonlight, my eyes glow brightly. But I didn't even notice how at some point I became completely speechless. Having turned into something like a walking dead man, having lost all essence. Perhaps it all started with that very offer to exchange the Beta family's business card for the right to own alcohol. I clearly remember my own shock at that moment. In fact, I was hopelessly in love with him. Jai Yunshu always knew very well how much I worried when I didn't receive a response. Until the moment when my parents from the E family found me. They said they hoped to persuade me and force me to hand over Beta Song Jinyan's business card. Jai Yunshu clearly understood that this was absolutely not an option. For me, the true meaning of Beta was quite clear, and yet then desperately trying to find a suitable excuse for a fictitious marriage. Jai Yunshu herself suggested exchanging business cards. I never thought that I would agree without the slightest hesitation, because Jai Yunshu believed in my brilliant success. Considering this in such a way that already next year my results will be impeccable. And then I will be able to silence all ill-wishers once and for all, having finally received the chance to live a normal, measured life together. Only now does it dawn on me that I misunderstood something, since I decided to break with everything and leave. I won't be able to go far anyway. In a sudden thought, Jai Yunshu jumps to his feet, deciding that I don't belong here. For this reason, he raises all possible connections to the ears. Whether it's a city bus station or a passenger train station, he has to find me, but half a day has already passed. Jai Yunshu is using absolutely all the resources of this area. However, there is still no news from the other side, and I feel like an empty shell. This scandal hits hard on Jai Jiangguo's daughter, who abused her position. At that point, the unfolding crisis had acquired a truly large-scale character. Hearing the fading click of the door opening, he returns home in a hurry. Anger gets stuck in my throat like a lump, and the words escape my lips in heavy sighs. Jai Jiangguo seems to have an inkling of what is going on in his daughter's mind. First of all, he gives the order to immediately stop any search for me. Having made a fatal mistake, he voices his guess out loud. Zhu Yuan goes to study, while Jai Yunshu slowly raises his head. He was wearing incredibly revealing clothes. Didn't that ad at Northern University disappear after 2 weeks? Jai Jiangguo is a heartless man, but what makes you think Xiaoyuan studied at Northern University? He took the college entrance exam to join the Ministry of National Defense, which put Jai Yunshu in a difficult situation. Jai Jiangguo cannot come to terms with the shame that has befallen his daughter. I remember clearly how I was treated all these long years. The hatred is not that strong, and I myself don't really understand why exactly you are sad. We are completely unable to appreciate people while they are nearby. Now that he's gone, to whom do you address your grief? Didn't you bid Xiaoyuan farewell only in anticipation of his imminent departure? One single word from Jai Jiangguo made Jai Yunshu literally freeze. He opens his mouth intending to change everything, but is horrified to realize that he cannot utter a sound. Countless heavy memories lie like dead weight in his heart. In recent years, the Yi family's parents had spoken strangely and unnaturally about Song Jinyan. I went through real bullying and torment. He understood perfectly well that I was his only light. But what did he end up doing? Everything was completely different from before. Even though he consistently stayed by my side, I continued to exist in an atmosphere of constant violence. He suddenly remembered Song Jinyan's words 3 days ago. I was the one who pushed him. I look at him, and in his gaze I can read only dull expectation. Secretly hoping to receive at least a drop of genuine kindness, Jai Yunshu not only blindly believed Song Jinyan, but also unconditionally trusted his every word. And on top of that, he slapped another person. This slap in the face finally destroyed all my timid hopes. Jai Jiangguo now knows exactly what to answer, because I can no longer hear my own daughter. I'm just too lazy to discuss the behavior of the Yi family's parents and my own daughter. Perhaps I should have left here much earlier. Zhu Yuan is a beautiful child, and true happiness can only be found away from his family. It's a pity that he offered his help at such an inopportune time. But this stubborn boy stood his ground. Hoping to the last for the intervention of Yi's parents, he ultimately encountered a series of grave misfortunes. If I were you, I would have packed my things long ago. Jai Jiangguo sketched out a plan for further action. But I'm not going anywhere because as the head of the family, I'm always busy and don't intend to waste time on the children's personal problems. Jai Yunshu stood motionless in the living room, thinking back to that moment and remembering my reaction during that exchange. I had already given up then, replaying the events of that night in my head. I addressed him in a deadly serious tone. Do you remember that promise you made at the very beginning when Jai Yunshu was squatting in front of him? Pain pierces my head as I squeeze it in my hands, and my heart continues to be tormented by unquenchable longing. The night is cold as ice, and outside someone's quick footsteps can be heard. Mother Yi rushes into the house in panic. Yunshu, did you really think that you didn't need Jinyan at all? That's why he lost his mind in the restaurant, she blurts out, and Jai Yunshu listens to Yi's mother in shock. The poor guy is beside himself with worry for Jinian. He is overcome with deep sorrow and wild rage. In a rage, he demands to know what I am trying to achieve, because in my eyes there was always only one Song Jinian reflected. Where is my son, do you happen to know? Emu makes a mistake and is flustered for a second. What are you even talking about? Why am I supposedly not interested in Xiu Yuan? He's my own son, Uncle Jian said angrily, looking straight at Emu. With his whole appearance, he desperately tries to attract at least a drop of attention to himself. Unfortunately, Emu still holds a grudge against me. Uncle Jian feels deeply disappointed. Looking at the windows, he muttered, Su Yuan went to school. He will never return home again, which makes Emu furious. In anger, he clings to Uncle Jian's hand, his eyes flashing. What other school? Didn't he agree to transfer Beta's quota to Jinian? Not at all, because there is an official announcement from the Northern University and a semi-monthly report. This child was always shirking his studies from an early age. He's always trying to lie, so when he comes back, I'll have to give him a good thrashing. Uncle Jian's heart is squeezed with burning longing and pain. The child is gone forever, and his birth mother still continues to grumble and complain. His patience finally snapped, and he shook off Emu's hand with a sharp movement. The voice was monotonous and cold. Su Yuan is entering the National Defense University. Mother Yi's face literally changes upon hearing this. Her expression becomes terrifying. Why on earth would he want to go to the National Defense University? What about Jinian? We've already trumpeted it to the whole world, and the school banquet is supposed to take place soon. What the hell is this Su Yuan thinking? Doesn't he see the state Jinian is in? No, bring him back immediately, even if you have to sacrifice that damned Northern University quota. Mother Yi grabs Uncle Jian's arm, forcibly pulling him outside. Realizing that he had done something stupid, Jai Yunshu desperately tries to break free and escape. But Emu only said one sentence, causing him to instantly fall silent. Jinyang tried to commit suicide, bleeding to death, and the confused Jai Yunshu doesn't know what to do. He has no choice but to go to the hospital with Emu. In the end, all this only happened because I abandoned Song Jinian, causing him to have a nervous breakdown. He bears direct blame for what happened. Jai Yunshu decides to wait until Song Jinian's condition completely stabilizes. He promises himself that from now on he will stay as far away from other people's affairs as possible. And now his main goal is to find me as quickly as possible, and finally hear the truth firsthand as the two of them approach the hospital room door. But as soon as they took a step inside, they heard Song Jinian's ringing voice. There is no depression whatsoever. On the contrary, judging by everything, he is in a great mood. In fact, I'm just itching to grab my things and leave. Previously, Uncle Jian sincerely believed that I was jealous of Song Jinian, and he lied shamelessly. Now, only a burning desire to escape holds me back, and I don't want to think about anything else. Uncle Jian stopped Mother Yi warningly, shaking his head slightly. Don't rush in. What is he talking about when he mentions watering flowers at Song Jinyang's father's? There was no one left in the ward except Song Jinian, and he had absolutely no illnesses. He jumps triumphantly onto the hospital bed with both feet. A brazen, smug laugh echoes around, revealing his true evil nature. My parents are now completely in my hands, and I was the one who got Beta's quota. Even the bride is mine now, even though this marriage is pure fiction. While I'm throwing tantrums, these two naive fools always come to my aid. They forced my sister to pack her bags and move out, but the main thing is that she is with you. Are you really afraid that he will decide to marry you? What a genius I am, Song Jinian says in a barely audible whisper. But in the ringing silence of the hospital room, both people frozen outside clearly hear every word. At this moment, Mother Yi's face is distorted with silent shock and disbelief. She feels like she's been the victim of auditory hallucinations, and Jai Yunshu clenches his fists until his knuckles turn white. The harsh reality hits them like a crushing blow. Is this really true? Song Jinian simply pretended to be seriously ill, openly admitting his insidious plan to take absolutely everything from me. First my own parents, and then the great fame of the singer. After all, there was always a coldness hidden in Jai Yunshu's soul, and I never dared to even dream of more. The earth is truly full of such evil and treacherous people. To claim that I am an illegitimate son and to openly call Yi's parents fools. And before us is the same honest and obedient Song Jinian, and Jai Yunshu slowly turns his head towards Yi's mother. His heart is torn apart by boundless and all-consuming sadness, and all this for the sake of such a notorious beast. They were sorely mistaken from beginning to end. They were shamelessly deceived, especially given Song Jinian's last words. The porcelain has already been broken, and Jai Yunshu is no longer afraid of any cold. He is no longer able to contain his anger and takes a decisive step out the door. The pride on Song Jinyan's face had not disappeared. He remains incredibly tense. "I curse you, you idiots!" Yi Mu raises his arm in rage, but Song Jinyan's voice instantly breaks into a pitiful groan. "Auntie, I beg you, come to your senses. I simply made a mistake and was wrong. It is not my malice that is to blame for everything, but only a severe clouding of reason. I had a terrible dream that my own cousin betrayed me, and you all turned away. My sister also abandoned me, so I was talking all sorts of nonsense. God, how it hurts." Song Jinyan barely has time to finish half a word before he demonstratively bangs his head on the hospital floor. Mother Yi sees blood in front of her, and her expression instantly changes. The mental pain torments her so much that it seems as if she herself is ready to go to the grave. Noticing the change in her attitude, Song Jinyan feels his heart pounding with triumph. "What exactly have you been trying to get from Ziyuan all these years? I intend to personally get to the bottom of it." Jai Yunshu's voice was icy cold. "My departure is my concern alone, you deal with it yourself." With his outstanding intelligence, he is capable of becoming the youngest leader in the area. Naturally gifted with incredible abilities, Jai Yunshu makes Song Jinyang turn pale in an instant. "Would you like to continue your excuses?" If previously Song Jinyan's hypocrisy could still be written off as a coincidence, now everything fell into place. He simply cannot comprehend that all these abominations were uttered by Song Jinyan himself. "Just thinking about the pain I had to go through makes it unbearably hard." By using influential connections throughout the country, they were able to quickly uncover the truth about Song Jinyan's dealings. Initially, Jinyan's notes contained nothing but lies and misinformation. But as soon as Song Jinyan lost his former influence, people willingly began to talk and revealed the whole truth. Song Jinyan's personal notebook was found in his room. Its pages document all his dirty crimes. "On February 9th, my own birthday, my father gave me a pair of new shoes. But I felt disgusting and ugly. Why did I have to be born into such a poor family? I so hoped that my father would die soon, and on March 12th he really did pass away. And it was all Yi Ziyuan's fault, because I saved him back then. Why didn't I save Jai Yunshu? Then, with such a noble deed, I could easily have entered the Jai family. However, the Yi family also turned out to be good, and I grew up under their roof. My very first task was to eliminate Yi Ziyuan once and for all. As long as he lives, I will never get what I want. Luckily, my aunt dotes on me, and every time the right moment comes along, everything works out perfectly. What a brilliant manipulator I am." Jai Yunshu mentally turns the page. When he came across this diary a few days ago, his face distorted with wild rage. "Wanting to destroy Yi Ziyuan, I pushed him with my own hands, never expecting that this guy would have such incredible luck. Even if he didn't become crippled, it doesn't change anything. In the end, I would still be able to marry Jai Yunshu. After all, he was only the first step in my notebook." My heart burns and blazes with an uncontrollable flame. I waited with bated breath for the moment when the years with Song Jinyan would finally pass, and now I see clearly. I was right about everything. How much I was bullied in the past, perhaps even back when I was 11 years old. Uncle Jian never got used to the Yi family's blatant bias. And in the end, he took me to his home, promising to take care of me until the end of my days, but I don't remember exactly when. He completely forgot about his original promise, while innocent people suffered day and night. I was lying on my broken, creaky bed, mindlessly caressing my fresh wounds after being thrown from the roof of a high-rise building just a few days ago. Uncle Jian had a chance to figure things out, but unfortunately, he chose not to listen to the truth. By slapping me, he completely plunged my world into pitch darkness, and I desperately wanted only one thing: to escape. Later, Uncle Jian showed that very notebook to Yi's parents. At first, they flatly refused to believe it, but soon they unmistakably recognized Song Jinyan's handwriting. "You have hurt my cousin so cruelly. I beg you, give me one more chance. From now on, I will be immensely respectful to you," I scream, while hot blood flows down my forehead. However, Yi's parents exchange only cold remarks, and the content of their conversation is more shocking than one could imagine. A monstrous and merciless fact comes to light. They openly renounce their own son, forced to waste false love on their nephew. What a terrible picture. Yi's parents look at each other in fear. Their hearts are filled with endless remorse, but isn't it too late to bite your elbows? No matter how hard Song Jinyan tried to fake suicide, he was unable to get the trio to express genuine repentance. The masks are finally dropped and the pretense comes to an end. The face brightens with cynicism. Am I not right in my actions when people don't give a damn about all the laws of heaven and earth? All I wanted was to live a good life. And even if everything were to happen again, I would do exactly the same thing, the E family challenges. Suddenly, Song Jinian jumps up and starts kicking the offender furiously until he starts screaming and begging for mercy. Mother E also rushes into battle, delivering much more brutal and devastating blows. Those same parents who so blindly adored Song Jin Nayan. Now that the truth about Jai Yunshu's popularity is coming to light, it's only causing a wave of negativity. What's the point of waking up now? Song Jinian was beaten half to death. He no longer has any tears left even for crying, and he lies flat on the ground like a dead dog. Yi's parents remained icy calm, casting a look of heavy shame at Jai Yunshu. Can you find Zhu Yuan? All these years we have been terribly unfair to him, and now we desperately want to atone for our guilt. Jai Yunshu doesn't deign to answer them, only silently turning his gaze to the dark night sky outside the window. What's the point of being tormented by pain and confusion, even if we find it? Everything valuable was irretrievably lost long ago, and Yi's parents, in complete disarray, are leaving in all directions. With heads bowed and tears streaming down their faces, they head to the National Defense University in Xiangnan County. It is a secret facility operated by the South China Military Command. In addition to drill training, they actively recruit specialists from a wide range of fields, dividing the school campus into two parts. One is located in a suburban area, and the other is right in the heart of a secure military zone where the entire cadet corps is based. The weather is dry and hot. The scorching sun beats down mercilessly from above, but the echoes of summer heat refuse to retreat as autumn heat reigns outside. Groups of cadets in closed uniforms are diligently engaged in physical training. Under the scorching rays of the sun, their clothes become completely soaked with sticky sweat. And yet they look absolutely relaxed, confidently looking forward. As graduates of the National Defense University, the cadets, in addition to strategic calculations, you have to devote a lot of time to training, and so I've been studying here for half a month now. Based on advanced physical training techniques borrowed from leading powers, there is no pressure or rush, and the food here is much better than anywhere outside the academy fence. And even though it was a difficult year in 1983, the conditions at the educational institution remained excellent. My parents used to give Song Jinian the best of everything while I only got dry leaves and sleeping on the bedside table. But now, receiving proper nutrition at school, I finally started to grow and get stronger. My gaze became so piercing and confident, radically different from the former sad boy, ready to fall from exhaustion at any moment. And now, when they first saw me during the entrance campaign to the Defense University, I appeared in a completely different image. I was so angry about all the bullying, but now it seems like this team really does build character. Because when you have 5 strong soldiers around you, you simply don't have time for your own sentimentality. And the rigorous 3-month military training helps me gradually adapt to the rhythm of the academy. My days are spent in grueling physical training, and in the evenings I invariably hurry to the quiet of the library. I am mastering a secret specialty, realizing that extremely severe trials await me in the future. At the same time, I am strictly forbidden to reveal my true identity. You need to learn to be a truly invisible person, because every student in a classified profile is a real asset to the country. I incredibly cherish this learning atmosphere, which was so difficult to find. There are no more biased and blind parents here. No fuss or random people, just hard study to serve your homeland. Even when the night has long since come into its own, I continue to sit in the library, and I don't want to leave at all. There are many equally motivated students studying around me. These are the best guys from among the military personnel, who arrived here from all corners of the country. Once the best in my district, I now feel enormous pressure. After all, the classmates around me are far from mere mortals. Late in the evening, walking next to a student with reddish hair, I leave the library genuinely amazed by the riches of books here. The library feels like a vast ocean, and even if you get stuck in it for a long time, I won't be able to master all these volumes before the end of my days. Luckily, I am fully focused on mastering the basic skills of deciphering and analysis, trying to practice everything right before class. The night is cold as ice. I wander along a narrow path and thoughtfully look at the starry sky. The images of my family in my memory now seem like just echoes of what I experienced in the past. Now that's gone, and it's quite possible that I'll never return home. Those 4 should probably be fine, although, having crossed the threshold of the school at the very beginning, despite the depth of my disappointment, I still find myself longing for them. People inevitably go their separate ways when they find themselves in cramped circumstances, but over time, The voices of the parents and Jai Yunshu gradually fade into silence. Except for rare moments of recollection, the waves in my soul no longer rage. Now it seems to me that Jai Yunshu did not have any special attractiveness at all. I don't have any close friends in college, except for the 5 roommates in our dorm. The only one who stands out is Lin Kaixia, who came all the way from Beijing. This girl is completely different from Jai Yunshu and has a remarkable individuality. She is full of inexhaustible enthusiasm and bold ideas, reminiscent of a bright flower in the warmth of a cozy room. And most importantly, she has brilliant abilities, especially when it comes to our secret specialty. Among all the students, she is undoubtedly the strongest of those I have met. From the moment she entered the academy, Lin Kaixia has been the center of attention. Although there is no outright ban on romantic relationships at the National Defense University, she invariably attracts a lot of curious glances from the cadets. Some whisper about her influential capital city family, while others are sure that she came here solely for the sake of science, and that she is capable of achieving success without wasting time. However, I don't care about this at all, because I'm used to walking alone. But no one expected that Lin Kaixia would take the initiative and decide to look for me. By openly expressing her thoughts, she involuntarily makes those around her whisper. This baffles me, and as I approach the door of our dorm, I freeze at the sight of a familiar silhouette. Zhang Xiaoying gives me a meaningful look. Lin Kaixia is acting very animatedly with me, although it is not at all about romance. Our conversations mostly revolve around academic and professional matters, but waiting outside the door of a men's dorm in the middle of the night. By the standards of that time, it looked like a real scandal. The boys returning to their rooms involuntarily glance at this scene. There is a mocking curiosity in their eyes, and I just want to turn around and leave. But seeing Lin Kaixia's calm expression, I suddenly clearly understood the whole point of what was happening. I could only stand up as Lin Kaixia handed me my scribbled notebook. Her smile was a bright flower, and it really was my notebook. I glance at the familiar red cover. I don't know if I want to take her back because I myself am madly in love with learning. In my knowledge, I am not one iota inferior to the professionals. I can safely be called a genius of deciphering, and besides, we both often visit the library. The rest of the classmates are also infected with this general enthusiasm. When I'm walking around the university campus, my favorite thing to do is read, settling down with a book in some quiet corner. The reason I was able to get into a prestigious university in the capital at all is not only because of my intelligence. A huge role was played by an amazing teacher, whom I think about so much. I never really talked about my family, but there was nothing surprising in those rare books. It was simply because of the teacher's supposedly seditious writings that I had to spend several long years in a cowshed. That is why everyone called him nothing less than Mr. Niu Peng, although he possessed colossal knowledge. He had a particularly deep understanding of the mysteries of astronomy. However, this very fact became his original sin, forever condemning him to the stigma of being a representative of the Black Five. When Mr. Niu Peng was being bullied by everyone, I was only 11 years old. It was during those days that I was finally kicked out of the house due to Song Jinyan's antics. I wandered around the old temple for a long time, trying to survive with my fragile child's body. On Mr. Niu Peng's instructions, I went to the abandoned back hill to collect medicinal herbs. Several times I almost died falling off cliffs, but Mr. Niu Peng always helped me survive. Since then, I have loved coming to this temple just to be near it. Over time, Mr. Niu Peng began to treat me as his own disciple. He insistently repeated that I should change my destiny through study, because he knew much more than the school teachers. His level of knowledge was incredibly deep and mature. Under the wing of Mr. Niu Peng, I gradually gained inner independence, turning into a diligent guy who is sincerely drawn to knowledge. And even in spite of the monstrous injustice in my own home, I tried to maintain a kind heart, carrying through the years an unwavering faith to serve his great country. Moreover, I did not break down and was still able to get to the very essence of things. Having gone through so many difficult trials, Mr. Niu Peng, he seriously undermined his health, although he himself told me the truth. It is quite possible to overcome any adversity. It's such a pity that he passed away right after I completed my entrance exams. He passed away on a rainy night, just before I was about to share with him the good news of my admission to university. When I crossed the threshold of the temple that night, I found only his cold body. I had to bury Mr. Niu Peng all alone on that very back hill. The only memento I had from him was a jade pendant. At that moment, I lost my only senior mentor forever. Having lost my main teacher in life, I experienced unbearable, soul-rending pain. The only person I still had hope of relying on was Jai Yunshu, but on that fateful day he was busy with something else, having declared that he intended to exchange the coveted university quota for a certificate. The very moment Mr. Niu Peng passed away, my entire familiar world collapsed and buried me under the rubble. Having lost absolutely everything for the second time, I plunged into the abyss of utter despair. And yet, in the end, I firmly decided to live for myself when Jianbei Institute was transformed into a national defense university. Having dedicated my life to defending my homeland, I always carry with me those few mementos. Among the modest arsenal of my old treasures, only the jade pendant given to me by Mr. Niu Peng, with which I left that dark place forever, is carefully preserved. And now, more than anything else in the world, in the silence of the library, I miss his wise advice. Sometimes I secretly take out the jade pendant, trying not to attract other people's attention, but this time Lin Kaixia unexpectedly noticed it. Her piercing gaze is drawn to this jade ornament. Possessing an incredibly keen insight, she, of course, immediately turns her attention to me. In addition to his striking appearance, this man also possessed a very special, strong character. It was rumored that Lin Kaixia was admitted to the National Defense University with the personal assistance of the leadership, arriving there in an army jeep. The director of the academy personally handled her admission. Having noticed that very jade pendant, Lin Kaixia immediately began to pester me with her questions. Unlike most timid students, she was distinguished by her rare independence and broad-mindedness. She had absolutely no regard for accepted conventions, since she decided to wait for me at the men's dormitory in the middle of the night. Lin Kaixia skillfully ignored any gossip and sidelong glances from those around her. Taking a quick glance at the abandoned notebook, I sighed heavily to myself. It became clear that I needed to have a very frank conversation with her. Taking back my notebook, I looked straight into Lin Kaixia's shining, sparkling eyes. In a stern tone, I said, "Lin, don't come here again." Lin Kaixia froze in place, staring at me with reddened eyes, and replied with a childish naivety. In the end, she just lowered her head and whispered quietly, "I didn't mean anything by it." And yet the emotional tension hung so thick in the air that my heart had to hold back. As I watched her go, I reminded myself that I had come here solely to serve my country. Thoughts of romance never really occupied my mind. Since that memorable night, Lin Kaixia has never bothered me again. After completing grueling military training, the recruits were finally given a day off. Most of the cadets chose to go outside the academy to go shopping. First-year students at the National Defense University were not only provided with free tuition, but they also paid a monthly cash allowance of 10 yuan. By 1983 standards, this was a substantial amount of pocket money, which I didn't even bother spending, preferring, as before, to spend the day in the silence of the student library. While I was deep into studying the secret disciplines, I found Lin Kaixia sitting right in front of me. Taking out her jade pendant from her pocket, she showed me exactly the same pendant as mine. The only difference was that I had a dragon and she had a phoenix-paired decoration. It turns out that it was a paired relic of a dragon and a phoenix, and she herself was my betrothed. Lin Kaixia's unexpected words literally made the ground fall out from under my feet. There was absolute silence in the library reading room for several long minutes. After all the trauma and pain I experienced from my previous relationship with Jinyun, I gave up on any thoughts of engagement. My heart longed for pure love, but my mind demanded cold calculation. I don't want to be trapped by other people's expectations again. I don't want to be a pawn in someone else's hands. I don't want to fall victim to blind promises. I don't want to live someone else's life. I don't want to experience the bitterness of betrayal again. I don't want to submit to someone else's will. I don't want to go back to the past. I don't want to bear the burden of other people's mistakes. I don't want to tolerate injustice. I don't want to be deceived in my best feelings. I don't want to dissolve into someone else. I don't want to settle for less. Her father and the late elder Gu once sealed their word with an unbreakable vow. If a boy and a girl were born into a family, they were expected to become related through marriage. And if children of the same sex were born, they were obliged to grow up as brothers. Years passed, but Lin Kaixia's father never forgot that long-standing promise. It's just a shame that due to sudden changes, the old Minggujiao restaurant has sunk into oblivion. At first, I thought I would never see this jade pendant again, and Lin Kaixia herself had no intention of getting married. That is why she was determined to get into the National Defense University. I couldn't even imagine that fate would be so amazing, since it brought us together in the library and allowed me to notice the dragon pendant right on my chest. After listening to Lin Kaixia's whole story, I was silent for a long time, not finding anything absurd in her words. Mr. Niu Peng's knowledge extended far beyond local realities, requiring a deep and strong personality. It's just a pity that all this had to be sacrificed to the merciless times. I still find it difficult to understand why Mr. Niu Peng did not leave after the trial was over. Instead, he chose a secluded life in a dilapidated temple amid the storms of the era. It's no wonder that it was he who taught me how to make those very same jade pendants. The meaning of this secret skill gradually dawned on me. Ultimately, it turned out to be an unspoken symbol of heartfelt affection and signs of love, although with my background, I could well have claimed the status of a groom from Qingyun Street. But showing this to just anyone would be a big mistake. Having experienced the falseness of my past relationship the hard way, I no longer believe in romance. Within the walls of the National Defense University, any feelings between people, they could be extremely revolutionary, and I'm hesitant to even return Lin Kaixia's dragon pendant. I'm not a rich kid at all. If I had guessed for even a second the true meaning of this thing, I would never have taken it. It's time to put everything back in its place, and as for that wedding she mentioned, it's better to forget about this, and without giving Lin Kaixia a chance to explain, I resolutely leave. Lin Kaixia remains sitting on the stool, looking at the two halves of the jade lotus in confusion. The vicious circle of the past is tightening again, leaving a bitter feeling of resentment in the soul. Without realizing it, Lin Kaixia notices something special about me. Realizing that I am very different from others with my unique inner core. And in my eyes one can read only quiet sadness mixed with unshakable revolutionary faith. I experienced this kind of hardening in my early childhood. It's like a bottomless abyss, and if you get a little closer, you'll inevitably fall down. Clutching the jade rod in his palm, Lin Kaixia silently climbs out of the window. The night sky above the library is captivating in its beauty, and the old Yutun tree on the sports ground. It looks like a lonely leaf that has not yet felt the cold breath of approaching autumn. Life continues to flow as usual, and I return to the hostel and silently sit down on the narrow balcony. Staring blankly at the dark sky, I sink into deep thought. Perhaps all that lies ahead for me is hard study away from Lin Kaixia, especially since the harsh military training has finally come to an end, giving way to regular theoretical and cultural classes. In this challenging era, young minds are burning with a fierce thirst for knowledge, possessing unshakable faith and a pure, unclouded soul. I also devote all my efforts to studying the disciplines, without forgetting about daily training, and during our studies, we accidentally cross paths with Lin Kaixia several times in the university cafeteria. After exchanging restrained nods, we simply pass each other. Of course, rumors keep popping up among the cadets that there is some kind of strange connection between us. The mentors initially tried to start a conversation about it, but the tension between us quickly subsided. Although the true nature of what is going on remains hidden, most guys remain honest, believing that such a bright girl like Lin Kaixia should not belong to just one person. Today, as per my routine, I go for a morning jog around the spacious sports ground. Suddenly my steps stop and my gaze turns forward, causing my face to instantly distort with disgust. The person who appears before me is none other than Jai Yunshu, and upon seeing me, he is engulfed by a storm of attention suppressed for years. He clearly can't control his own legs, but this abrupt gesture on my part, it makes Jai Yunshu's face instantly turn pale, revealing his deep inner dependence. Keeping my expression blank, I take a demonstrative step back, building an insurmountable psychological defense against an uninvited guest from the past. A gigantic void pierced Jai Yunshu's heart, taking his breath away and causing unbearable pain. His face reflected such deep bitterness that he involuntarily wondered, was it really true that I felt such strong hatred towards him at that moment? Jai Yunshu felt a sharp, burning resentment. Taking a step forward, he tried to get closer, but I immediately pushed him back, overcome with cold anger. I had no intention of engaging in idle chatter with Jai Yunshu. My voice was cold, and I immediately cut off any attempts to continue the conversation. "Sister, this is a restricted area, mind your manners and think about how it looks from the outside," I said. Jai Yunshu was stunned by these words, struck by how painfully familiar this scenario was. I recalled the day when I, full of excitement and hope, tried to share something similar within the walls of Peking University. What exactly did he say then? He instinctively pulled away and kept his distance. demanding that the rules of the court be followed and that the general reputation not be harmed. A searing pain pierced Jai Yunshu's soul. He finally fully experienced the same thing that I once experienced. The seed of bitter insight took root. Taking a deep breath, Jai Yunshu tried to overcome the rising panic and maintain a semblance of calm. Su Yuan, you left without saying a word. Don't you want to explain everything to me? He said in a breaking voice. After listening to him, I remained completely unperturbed and did not go into justifications. But this cold uncertainty painfully pierced Jai Yunshu's heart. After all, he understood perfectly well the true meaning of my words, what it was like to grow up in a family where there was no room for love. When you are forced to sacrifice your best for the sake of others, condemning yourself to a lifelong shadow until, in utter despair, you erase your own personality to the ground. Hiding from the whole world forever so as to never again give reason for false attachments. Just thinking about the terrible despair Jai Yunshu had to go through when he made this decision, and just thinking about it almost broke his heart. And yet I myself vegetated in such a cruel and hopeless reality for more than 10 years. Why on earth does he still have so many questions? If I had not left then quietly and on time, I would have inevitably been brought to my death. Jai Yunshu timidly raised his hand. I just want to touch your head like in the old childhood days. But his palm remained hanging in the empty air, meeting my dull, indifferent gaze. My inner world was once again subjected to a cruel test. Forgive me, only one single word of apology escapes from him with a bitter sigh. Unable to find the right words, Jai Yunshu helplessly raised his eyes to the sky, and after a long time, he sank down right on the side of the sports ground. My memory comes back to that terrible year when I was only 11 years old. When my birth parents kicked me out of my own home. Huddled under the tree in tears, Jai Yunshu seemed like a real angel to me then, who gave me a ghost of hope for salvation, which ultimately broke me. The scars from that pain still ache in my chest to this day. Looking away with a detached expression, I fix my face on Jai Yunshu with a firm, unyielding expression. If you came here just to protect Song Jinyan, then you'd better return to the north immediately. Believe me, the firewood has already been chopped and I won't stand on ceremony. Jai Yunshu's face instantly turns red at my words. Shaking his head inconsolably, he whispers, "No, Xiaoyuan, it's not like that at all. I came to visit you exclusively," he said, trying to convince me that this whole story was a monstrous misunderstanding. He said he didn't mean to treat me badly at all, he just blindly accepted everything as it was. But remembering that time, all his previous actions and shameless words come back to mind with renewed vigor. Since you have seen everything here with your own eyes, you can now calmly return back. I have no desire to renew contact with Jai Yunshu, because as soon as I looked at his face, the horror I experienced 6 months ago came back to life in my memory. It took me a full 6 months of continuous pain to heal the emotional wounds left behind. Why did this man come here again just to stir up old wounds? Jai Yunshu's body trembled violently. Realizing that during this time, I had finally and irrevocably distanced myself from him. Desperately grabbing my hand, he looks at me with tear-filled, bitter, and broken eyes. "Xiaoyuan, why did our life come to this state?" Jai Yunshu's voice trembled with helplessness. "Because being attached to you only brings pain," I cut him off coldly and honestly. And in turn, I ask him the main question: why did everything come to this end? Wasn't it Jai Yunshu himself who indulged Song Jinyan time and again, destroying everything around him? Countless times I have cried out deep within my soul, none of this matters anymore. Listen, this is our last conversation, and I sincerely wish for you and Song Jinyan to live in harmony for 100 years. Don't ever come to me again, just when Jai Yunshu is trying to continue his plot and confuse everything completely. My next words make him freeze in place, as if struck by lightning. I am immensely grateful for the ephemeral warmth and the illusory hope that you gave me in the past. But for heaven's sake, don't make me hate you even more, and Jai Yunshu hesitates. His face turns completely pale until my retreating shadow dissolves into the distance. Crouching down, I feel a heavy, endless melancholy that settles like a dead weight in my heart. I may seem resilient, but I am not an iron man who can endure absolutely anything. At this moment, tears fill the eyes, and the depth of the pain experienced is clearly visible on the face. That obedient and bright boy from my memories still fills my soul with love, which I can no longer turn towards myself at this hour. Jai Yunshu finally had a terrible realization. It seems I really am losing control of myself. On the branches of the old Yutan tree, deep autumn drops the last yellowed leaf. Landing softly on Jai Yunshu's shoulder, this leaf caught him in a moment of absolute inner devastation. He used to be so sure of his unchanging importance to me, but now that the bitter truth has finally reached him, the man seemed to have lost the saving warmth of the southern sun. Feeling the ringing winter chill of the piercing air, Jai Yunshu feels his body turn to stone, losing the ability to move. He stares in the direction where I just disappeared, his heart pounding in his chest. The darkness of the night sky deepens around me as I walk away in silence. Jai Yunshu's life at this moment seems like an absolute ringing void. The heavy sadness of mad love weighs on the mind, although cold rationality gradually returns to the head. Reason tells him that he needs to quickly expose the true face of Song Jinyan hiding behind the mask, and finally get irrefutable evidence of his crimes. But why did every time I was hurt, everything turned out exactly like this? I disappeared from his life, and for the next 6 months Jai Yunshu literally went crazy, trying unsuccessfully to find any news about me. He took extreme risks and put his own future on the line in an attempt to break down the barriers that had been erected. But he was never able to break through the rigid professional protection and isolation of the National Defense University. Only until influential relatives on that side could no longer turn a blind eye to the atrocities committed by their daughter, forcing him to contact old acquaintances from the walls of the Defense Academy. That's how Jai Yunshu learned of my location and rushed here headlong, hoping to fix everything, naively believing that after a personal meeting it would be possible to calmly explain and bring back the past. But when he came face to face with me, he saw only my cold, absolutely calm and silent eyes. And at that moment, Jai Yunshu realized with all his cruelty how stupid and naive his hopes had been. There is no longer a drop of the old love left in my eyes. All former feelings crumbled to dust, crashing against the walls of harsh reality. As if carried away by a sharp wind, memories are replaced by the cold alienation of strangers. Jai Yunshu desperately tried to find words to justify himself several more times. But faced with the same icy barrier as before, he was unable to utter a sound. All that was left was to resign ourselves to the inevitable, allowing this moment to fade like fallen leaves of autumn, which eventually turn ingloriously into dust underfoot. But he still stood for a long time under the spreading tree, looking indifferently at the ground strewn with leaves, where the images of those distant years came to life again and again in my memory. When we first held each other's hands tightly, vowing never to part no matter what. How bitter it is to realize that he himself broke this promise, and the deep wounds he inflicted will bleed for many years to come. Jai Yunshu's pale face is distorted by the unbearable mental pain pressing down on him from within. He fully understood the despair of the dead end into which they had driven themselves and their own families. Instead of returning to the noisy dorm, I continue to wander through the quiet alleys of the university campus. It's just because I desperately don't want to accidentally run into Jai Yunshu again. The measured student life was irrevocably disrupted by this unexpected and painful visit. Left alone with my confused thoughts, I feel deep inner turmoil. Without realizing it, my feet lead me to the familiar library building, where I stare in confusion at its narrow front door. Sitting on the steps of the stairs, I bathe in the soft, cool glow of the moonlight. My body is saturated with the colors of the years I have lived, because that very milestone of 11 years gave me new hope from the hands of Jai Yunshu. I have loved honestly for 7 long years. How sad that at 18, all these fragile expectations were destroyed by Jai Yunshu himself. And now, having appeared here, he is trying to convince me that everything that happened was just a ridiculous misunderstanding. But those vividly experienced images of pain and humiliation come back to mind again and again. I can't decide whether to believe a single word Jai Yunshu says. After all, I have studied him too well over so many years to immediately cast aside doubts. I can't quite let go of the past yet, when suddenly a pair of graceful female legs appears in my field of view. A soft, almost tangible light pours onto the path in the silence of the moonlit night. Slowly raising my head, I was surprised to see Lin Kaixia standing next to me. She sits down quietly next to me, looking up at the starry sky and quietly speaking her thoughts out loud. Her presence makes my soul feel noticeably lighter, although my heart still feels crowded with countless unspoken words, which I can't seem to put into form, and this unexpected unity arouses genuine curiosity in me. I try to drown out the rising panic in a quiet voice, afraid of getting caught up in the tangled web of other people's feelings again. Not finding a precise answer to this internal question, I myself do not understand the nature of what is happening. Suddenly, a crystal clarity is born inside me. I don't love anymore, I really don't love anymore. When the depth of disappointment reaches its ultimate peak, I suddenly clearly realize how long and firmly attached I have been to this bright sincerity. Lin Kangxia clearly doesn't expect to hear such a quick and direct answer from me. We sit next to each other in silence for a while, and a genuine smile gradually blossoms on my face. Like the bright sparks of a festive fireworks display, these moments bring the long-awaited warmth that I have been missing so much. I must admit, spending time with a girl like Lin Kangxia is truly easy and pleasant. As I defend myself from the shadows of the past, I tell myself, I just need to boldly move towards the future. Lin Kangxia stood up and lightly patted me on the shoulder, saying, "Go to your room and get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow will bring new strength, and this heavy knot in the chest will finally be untied." Back at the dorm, I fall into a deep sleep and wake up to the rays of the morning sun gently caressing my face. A long-awaited absolute peace reigns in the soul. In the following days, my studies continued as usual, but I increasingly had the chance to cross paths with Jai Yunshu. Whether it's during lectures in the classroom, or in a noisy university cafeteria, or even on the way after class when I invariably notice his lonely figure by the side of the road. Jai Yunshu stands quietly and motionless at the edge of the path, watching me with a soft, hazy gaze. His refined features, combining both cold detachment and his former beauty, they involuntarily become a noticeable picturesque detail of the entire campus, giving rise to new gossip about the true nature of our relationship. It is the harsh winter of 1983. The question of how exactly to classify our current connections remains up in the air, growing from a personal drama into a quiet internal problem that each of us must cope with alone. The storm outside only intensifies, and on the sixth night of Jai Yunshu's endless visits to the university complex, the inhospitable southern climate finally breaks through with icy, piercing rain. I'm sitting in my dorm room studying while my floormates casually mention that someone is waiting downstairs in the rain. I immediately get a hunch about who exactly could have decided to take such a step. I sit in complete silence for a while, but finally I get up resolutely and head for the exit, understanding that this protracted story must be finally closed with a direct and honest conversation. Leaving the dormitory building, I find myself immersed in a thick shroud of cold rain fog. Taking a deep breath, I confidently step forward into the first autumn rain of the season, bringing with it a chilly shiver. Small drops dissolve in thick fog under the streams of bad weather. Jai Yunshu's figure stood alone at the entrance, completely soaked to the skin by the cold streams of water. Only his bloodshot eyes stare piercingly at me through the veil of rain as I approach. Looking at the man standing in front of me, I feel a surprising inner equanimity. And although this man once occupied the main place in my life, now the same storm remains in my heart. As much as I wanted to just take the moon from the sky at that moment, just to bring him some semblance of happiness. Uncle Jai Yun was deeply broken and unhappy at that hour, but I remained unwaveringly calm. Everything that was happening only caused me slight irritation. After all, in the past, she was the very sister whom I sincerely admired and looked up to. Jai Yunshu's face was red from tears and the cold, and her lips, barely holding the hairpin, were trembling violently. A spasm constricted my throat, preventing me from uttering a word. She desperately tried to tell me that deep down she always considered me just a little brother. But in the face of my calm, icy eyes, she couldn't squeeze out a single sound, and I wasn't going to answer her. Reaching out my hand, I merely mechanically wiped the raindrops from her wet face. The man standing in front of me seemed alien and distant. Feeling that I was finally moving away, Jai Yunshu desperately tried to rush after me. But my frozen silhouette was imprinted in her memory like a heavy, indelible nail. It was as if a drop of hot blood was stuck in her chest, spreading throughout her heart. Her whole world was painted in crimson tones. Ziayuan, forgive me, I specifically took a week off for this meeting. I only have a week. Do you really not want to see me, or at least listen to me a little even in that time? I'm leaving tomorrow. Can't you give me one more chance to fix everything? Jai Yunshu begged through tears. Wiping away the tears running down her cheeks, she waited for an answer, but I continued to remain silent. I silently looked at this familiar, but now so alien face. Seeing her bitter sobs, I did not take a step from the spot, and at that very moment, I clearly realized how violently Jai Yunshu's entire body was trembling. I just closed my eyes heavily from the approaching pain, the sight of her tears no longer echoed in my soul with the same pity. This meant only one thing: I had completely and irrevocably fallen out of love with Jai Yunshu. Leaving the umbrella in Jai Yunshu's hands, I silently turned around and walked back to the dormitory. This time, I was determined to put an end to all the accumulated issues with Jai Yunshu. I sincerely hope that we will never cross paths again in this life, neither Jai Yunshu nor Song Jinyan. Not Tianzin's parental home, where all four could now seek their happiness together. The only thing I had left was my modest belongings and a firm decision to devote myself entirely to serving my homeland. I don't regret anything because this is my own conscious choice and my predetermined destiny. When the longing for a past love finally subsides, I habitually light a lonely lamp in the room. Throwing the umbrella on the ground, Jai Yunshu quickly ran up to me and tightly grabbed my waist from behind with her arms. Through the sobs in her voice, a desperate plea sounded: "Please don't leave me." I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. I won't argue anymore. Allowing Jai Yunshu to cling helplessly to me for the last time, I only closed my eyes heavily. It is difficult to say exactly how much time passed under the noise of the dying elements until the rain finally stopped completely. Bright moonlight broke through the broken clouds, casting a cool glow on the spreading yutun tree near the sports ground. The heavy clouds gradually dispersed. Jai Yunshu continued to frantically hug my empty shadow, feeling reality slipping away in an instant. Finally, Jai Yunshu's grip slowly loosened, leaving only a dull but already fading pain in my chest. I left without looking back even once. Broken by despair, Jai Yunshu fell to her knees on the wet ground, bursting into tears and realizing that she had lost me forever. At that moment, she experienced absolute, all-consuming emptiness. This burning feeling of a bottomless abyss of the past was forever imprinted in her memory. The realization of guilt and bitter remorse overtook her too late, when nothing could be fixed. The exams came to an end, and the day came when Jai Yunshu was forced to leave the premises of the National Defense University. She didn't even try to come and say goodbye to me personally. Knowing full well that I never want to see her again, and admitting that I had destroyed my own love. By that time, Jai Yunshu had already clearly understood the depth of her past mistakes. In fact, even before this trip, she was already formally married. To call a spade, they were officially considered a married couple. But the development of events took a sharp turn, completely unexpected from my point of view. Enough of discussing getting a driver's license. It's everyone's personal business, because the past can't be brought back. His heart is broken into pieces, but he knows he deserves no excuses. After all, on that night of despair, he personally drove me away. As if pouring salt on an open wound, he now feels the full burning pain of hopelessness. And if you really, truly love someone, then there is no need to disturb Jai Yunshu any longer, because he will choose his own path of atonement without retreating. Proving your intentions not in words, but in deeds. He is still the same man who once held my hand tightly, whispering that there would be no more loneliness in my world. Sister Lin, on the day of my departure, the sky was covered with gray, gloomy clouds. I was returning on the train, watching my hometown gradually shrink outside the window. Jai Yunshu closed his eyes heavily, and when he opened them again, a cold light flashed in my gaze. Everyone who hurt me. He will definitely pay the bills, including himself, although Jai Yunshu's own thoughts no longer matter. I have no interest in this anymore, especially after everything was said outright. I returned to my usual student routine, where, in addition to studying, regular physical training according to the schedule during the first half of the year takes up a large place. Over time, I realized how much everything had changed with Lin Kaixia's presence, because starting from that memorable night, the most important understanding came to me: it is simply impossible to live looking back at other people's opinions. I will no longer allow myself to be held hostage by other people's feelings and approval, which I so desperately needed before. Seeking recognition from indifferent parents or Uncle Jai Yunshu. All this gave rise to nothing but insane internal torment, and now I no longer want to cling to this heartless family. Because they are absolutely not worth it, and I don't give a damn about the sideways glances of strangers. On this point, Lin Kaixia and I are in complete agreement, although there is no talk of any romance here. We are connected solely by studying together and supporting each other, and Lin Kaixia, apparently, comes from a very influential family. She has an amazing wealth of knowledge, having access to the latest educational materials and computer programs that she can easily pull out of her bag. and teaches me basic computer decoding skills. Thanks to her, I realized how important it is, and I myself try to help Lin Kaixia reach new intellectual heights. From the outside, it might seem as if each of us had a stormy personal life, but gradually, the idle rumors among the students began to die down. Although questions of morality and personal style were quite acute in the academy in those years, young people are always open to everything new and easily absorb the trends of the era, especially students with progressive thinking who are ready to welcome a fresh wave of ideas. Gradually, strong couples began to form on campus. Although the academy's leadership had just held a strict meeting, calling on all cadets to vigilantly maintain order and discipline. For us, any obstacles had already lost their meaning, so I continued to confidently move forward side by side with Lin Kaixia, representing the living embodiment of the true revolutionary spirit of the new generation. We still spend our days studying together in the quiet of the student library. Meanwhile, in a dark room in a small courtyard, located thousands of miles away, Jai Yunshu sits on the sofa with his head down, while the floor around him is littered with empty wine bottles. The air in the apartment is filled with the heavy smell of alcohol. This is only the second time in his life he's gotten drunk. The first time it happened was the day I revealed my feelings to him. Then he drank too much, spending the whole night in painful hesitation. The second time happened now as soon as he saw me with Lin Kaixia in person, which made my soul feel unbearably sick. An irritated voice comes from behind the thin partition next to him. The Yi family is publicly branding and punishing Song Jinyan. All his dirty tricks and underhanded schemes have finally been fully exposed. The reputation is completely and irrevocably destroyed, and any normal work is out of the question. Now, even if he were offered slave labor, it is unlikely that anyone would agree to take him in, leaving him absolutely without a livelihood. Song Jinyan can only lock himself within the four walls of his home, but the Yi family's parents are not going to put up with this at all. Just like he once set me up. I will have to endure this punishment 1,000 times, but Song Jinyan cannot withstand even a tenth of such torture. Surrendering, he kneels before Jai Yunshu, desperately begging for help and leniency. However, Uncle Jai Yun's anger turns out to be far more terrible and severe than any punishment imposed by the Yi family's parents. From then on, Song Jinyan began to drag out an existence that was worse than death itself. All of them, in one way or another, helped me to carry out retribution, waiting for my forgiveness, although I no longer care about it. The elderly parents of the Yi family now look deeply unhappy and broken. Their exhausted faces invariably bear the marks of deep sorrow and bitter remorse. Uncle Jai Yun still refuses to soften his sentence or back down, continuing to remain in the army for the sake of only one cherished goal: to wait for the right opportunity, because more than 3 years have already passed. Meanwhile, Song Jinyan continues to be harassed daily until he is completely exhausted. He walks around with a dull look and dark circles under his eyes from constant beatings. His mental state is finally deteriorating, developing into a severe form of depression, which is why the parents of the Yi family, every night, forced to hide in the corners of the room in despair, bitterly lamenting the fate of Song Jinyan. The second of the elders falls to his knees with tears in his eyes, begging for mercy. But Uncle Jai Yun remains deaf to their pleas, considering this a deserved payment for what they have done. Finally, the long-awaited time for graduation ceremonies has arrived at the National Defense University. In the midst of the celebration, Jai Yunshu receives an unexpected call that sends him into such a rage that he is forced to rush to the hospital. Now it's his turn to atone for old sins in the face of new challenges. Attention everyone, this mission is of strategic importance. The slightest mistake is absolutely unacceptable here. In the summer of 1987, the situation around the young specialists who had just graduated from the academy was tense to the limit. In addition, many serious security threats remained. In those years, the university was located on territory controlled by the Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Association. Therefore, every trained specialist was worth his weight in gold to the state. The secret profile of graduates of the National Defense University played a special role in this. Based at a relatively close distance from key objects, established at a research center in the far northwest of the country, it carried out covert work intercepting and analyzing computer codes. This was an operational task of particular importance. Such developments directly determined the future modernization of the armed forces, so immediately after receiving their diplomas, graduates, they were sent directly to secret facilities in the northwestern region. Naturally, hostile foreign intelligence services immediately made them their main target, hatching plans to eliminate them. A special armed escort was assigned to ensure their safe transportation. The leadership of this risky escort mission was entrusted to Jai Yunshu. Always operating stealthily from the shadows, he sought to remain invisible to the enemy. Dressed in a formal suit, he stood motionless on the hilltop, watching the column of cars passing below. His eyes remained sharp and cold, like the blade of a knife, but as soon as they lingered on a particular car, a softness instantly appeared in his gaze. Over the past years, Jai Yunshu had made a huge personal contribution to the common cause. However, he stubbornly refused any promotions, patiently waiting for just one moment. When the Defense University announces a new assignment of specialists to the Northwest. As soon as I left the academy, he immediately submitted a report to participate in this escort operation. Jai Yunshu is still tormented by a deep sense of loss, sincerely believing that the true meaning of his life is to remain that very protective sister for me, trying to prove to me that absolutely nothing had changed inside him. His twisted salvation consisted only in invisibly guarding me from the shadows. In the hope that upon arriving at their destination, they would have a chance for reconciliation, this was the only thing left for Uncle Jai Yun to do. While inside the moving car, I looked out the dirty window with indifference. Abandoned outposts flashed past the window, and as our transport went deeper into the endless expanses of the Northwest, the surrounding reality became increasingly harsh and merciless, in sharp contrast to the calm atmosphere of the campus, forcing you to completely rethink your entire previous curriculum. Coming face to face with the region's wild nature, I realized how much I had changed during my 4 years of study. Having transformed from a naive youth into a mature, seasoned, and internally balanced person. Having graduated with far from the brightest grades, I nevertheless managed to become one of the best representatives of that graduating class. And now our path lay to the harsh Northwest. While performing tasks to ensure the safety of the convoy, I noticed more than once how the transport team would suddenly stop in the middle of the road. However, the movement quickly resumed, although one could only guess how many attacks were taking place outside our perimeter. Almost all the escort forces sent ahead of us were subjected to brutal interceptions. By the time the convoy finally reached the research center of the original 200 escorts, just over 100 fighters remained in service. It was becoming obvious what bloody and terrible battles we had to go through on the way, but as soon as we reached the place, we didn't have a minute to rest. We had to get back to work immediately. Upon arriving at the research center, I almost immediately discovered an acute shortage of necessary communications equipment. Without delay, I compiled a detailed report and demanded that the equipment be replaced, building on the very same innovative works that I wrote while still studying at the academy. Extremely inspiring ideas for the National Defense Information Security field. Management assigned me to lead a specialized group to combine scientific research with practical protection of military networks, taking our communications system to a fundamentally new level of development. And I did not disappoint expectations, having spent only 3 months of hard work. My developments literally revolutionized the work of the research center, significantly strengthening the reliability of code protection, raising the overall level of safety to an unattainable height in just 1 quarter since the start of operations, having successfully compensated for the gaps that existed here before my arrival. And yet, I was haunted by a strange feeling. At times it seemed as if someone was constantly watching me from behind my back, but as soon as I turned around, there was no one around. I attributed it to banal fatigue from continuous work. That day, when a heavy downpour broke out outside the window, I had to urgently return to the main communications center. While conducting a critical experiment, I rushed headlong to help the station. The elements were raging in earnest, creating an extreme and deadly dangerous situation around. Ignoring my own safety, I still managed to repair the damaged communication line. But on the way back, I fell into a trap, falling into a deep underground cave. Due to the raging downpour, communication with the outside world was completely cut off. I had to spend 3 long days in this ice trap, balancing on the brink of life and death in an icy dungeon, when everything before my eyes was covered with a murky veil. It suddenly seemed to me as if a weak ray of light broke through the darkness, and someone's vaguely familiar shadow appeared in it. Someone carefully but persistently helped me get to my feet, pulling me up step by step. My savior's physical strength seemed to be running out, but a sudden surge of energy flared up within me, allowing me to overcome the steep climb. It was the first time in 3 days that I greedily gulped in some fresh air from outside. The feeling of being brought back to life after so many trials was incredibly wonderful, and I longed to thank my mysterious savior. Unfortunately, this man only silently handed me over to the military medics who arrived. And then he disappeared into the shadows, and I no longer had the physical strength to call out to him. I soon lost consciousness and spent the next 3 days unconscious in a hospital bed. Having finally recovered from what I had experienced, I tried to find my savior throughout the area. But everyone around me maintained a strange, deafening silence until one day the director of the research center came to see me personally, advising me to put aside unnecessary thoughts and concentrate entirely on scientific work. Protecting employees and ensuring the safety of the territory is the direct responsibility of specialized units. Having received no answer, I waved my hand, deciding that any military man would have done the same in my place, and did not return to the issue, judging by the fragmentary phrases of other employees. This was the same autonomous special escort group that began protecting us from the very moment we graduated from the academy. Another 3 years of hard work passed, during which I managed to develop an advanced second-generation communication system. This allowed us to significantly expand the information and combat capabilities of our troops. In recognition of my achievements, I was appointed deputy director of the research center. On the day of my official transfer to the new position, the director invited me for a drink. And in passing, he told me an extremely harsh truth, given the strategic importance of the communications being developed. Our research center is regularly subjected to brutal attacks by enemy saboteurs. And skillfully repelling sudden enemy ambushes under cover of night, over the past 3 years they have managed to prevent more than 70 armed attacks. But this success came at a terrible price, the death of many comrades in arms who, fortunately, were saved from complete defeat. Demonstrating remarkable ingenuity, the detachment successfully thwarted the enemy plot and completed all assigned tasks for organizing countermeasures. Now we had the opportunity to reach a qualitatively new level and take on much more complex and large-scale tasks. The director silently took an old photograph out of his desk drawer and carefully placed it in front of my face. The hum of the equipment made his voice sound a little quieter than usual. I deliberately hid this from you before, fearing that such news could seriously distract you from your most important scientific research. Overcome by sudden confusion, I mechanically downed a glass of wine. The director nodded sympathetically in response and sighed heavily, catching his breath. "You know the commander of our Special Forces unit very well." These words made my insides turn over in shock. Until that moment, I couldn't even imagine who was hiding behind the mask of the group's permanent leader. Without realizing it, I suddenly clearly heard Jai Yunshu's quiet but familiar voice in my head. I immediately shook my head furiously, driving away this thought. What nonsense, after all, Jai Yunshu by then should have long ago settled into a quiet family life in the capital. Rumor has it that he has long since tied the knot with Song Jimin, and he probably raised children, spending his day's chores around the house. How could he possibly have ended up here at a secret facility in the middle of nowhere, performing such dangerous work? But the director only smiled bitterly. You can be sure of it, it's the absolute truth. It turned out that all this time, the permanent commander of the special group was precisely Jai Yunshu, who secretly protected my peace for 3 long years. I remembered that fateful day when I fell into an underground cave. Then Jai Yunshu risked his life to save me. And he even managed to pull me out. The price he paid for those constant assassination attempts and clashes with saboteurs was his own severe injuries, which now left him limping on one leg. All these years they have served invisible under the command of the commander, paying for our safety with their own blood. And now, with the successful completion of the second-generation communications system, the Special Security Unit had fulfilled its duty to the end and was subject to gradual disbandment. Jai Yunshu himself went through real hell on the front lines of contact with the enemy. Having survived wounds from 3 heavy bullets, one of which passed within millimeters of his wounded heart. Having miraculously survived that massacre, he categorically refused to retire or be evacuated to the rear. Preferring to remain on the front lines until the very end, today was the day our commander departed. Apparently, the director was well aware of our complex backstory and the blood ties that existed between us. That is why he decided to reveal the truth to me, although Jai Yunshu himself strictly forbade anyone to talk about it. My gaze fell on the photographs lying on the table, and in one of them I was surprised to see myself walking next to Lin Kaixia, near the old building of the university library. Even though the photos of Lin Kaixia were neatly torn in half, I recognized them at first glance. Could it be that Jai Yunshu has really been here by my side for all these 3 years? Why have we never crossed paths during all this time? My thoughts became tangled in a tight knot, causing me to painfully feel the full complexity of our intertwined fate. The man I had carefully erased from my memory had silently shielded me from enemy bullets for 3 years in a row, risking his life in dozens of operations. At the same time, he never demanded anything in return and did not even try to talk to me when we met, preferring to remain an eternal shadow, protecting me from any danger. That distant day from my childhood when I turned 11 years old suddenly came back to me. Huddled under a spreading yudong tree, overcome with tears and resentment, I felt completely abandoned until Jai Yunshu appeared before my eyes like an angel. Taking my warm hand tightly, she promised to protect me from any adversity until the end of her days. It seemed to me that after our dramatic disagreement within the walls of the National Defense University, our paths have diverged forever and we will never see each other again. But what Jai Yunshu has done now, it turned absolutely everything inside me upside down, completely knocking the ground out from under my feet and forcing me to look at the past completely differently. Experiencing a storm of conflicting emotions from the realization of her actions, I felt a growing storm in my chest. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I silently grabbed that very photograph from the table. And with all his might, he rushed out of the office, running headlong onto the territory of the research center. At the very moment I appeared at the gate, an army jeep was just driving away from the main checkpoint, and I screamed desperately, trying to stop the car. There was complete silence inside the car, but my intuition told me that Jai Yunshu was sitting right there, behind the tinted windows. Why was there only a deafening silence in response? Meanwhile, the rearview mirror of the speeding car reflected the face of Jai Yunshu, who finally noticed me on the road. A cold, bitter smile flashed across his face, revealing for a moment a deep emotional shock. But this fleeting display of emotion was immediately suppressed, causing the attendant sitting next to him to hesitate. The jeep driver asked anxiously, "Commander, do you want us to turn around?" However, Jai Yunshu only slowly lowered his gaze to his empty left hand. He closed his eyes heavily and said curtly, "No, let's move on." During one of the previous fierce battles with enemy saboteurs, he protected me with his body until the very end. The price for his rescue was the amputation of his left arm, which left him permanently incapacitated, and he was forced to retire at the request of his command. After which he went through a difficult course of treatment and rehabilitation. Uncle Jai Yun wanted with all his heart to continue to stay by my side, protecting me, but he understood perfectly well that in this state he would only become a burden. That's why he had to accept the inevitable and retreat, continuing to guard my peace from a distance, albeit in my own hard-won way. It's just a pity that the path of life is so short, and it's simply impossible to keep track of all the twists and turns of fate. For all these 3 long years, Uncle Jai Yun continuously carried an unbearable, burning pain in his heart. How many times during this time in the silence of the laboratory, I myself automatically turned around, subconsciously hoping to see him nearby. Mentally acknowledging that excessive attachment and fear of causing pain can ruin everything. Sometimes it is better to stop in time and decide to leave the person alone than to bear the burden of imposed care. Although after everything I had been through, I certainly deserved the right to at least have a sincere conversation online. I probably should have been a much more reliable and understanding partner for him, but Uncle Jai Yun had already left, leaving no farewell message of his presence, not a word before leaving. 10 years passed, followed by nearly 2 decades of turbulent reforms and openness that forever changed the face of the country. This particularly affected the area of creating domestic national information security systems, where, thanks to tireless work, it was possible to bring communications technologies to the 4th generation of long-term progress. And although, despite the efforts of many generations of specialists, we have not yet managed to reach an absolute world level, the industry continued to develop at a tremendous rate, having risen from the ranks of a 1987 Defense Academy graduate. After more than 10 years of dedicated service, I went from being a greenhorn to a recognized, top-tier expert in the field of information technology. having dedicated all his youth and strength to strengthening the digital shield of our homeland, becoming not only the youngest head of the department, but also the chief scientific advisor. Having spent most of his life in the harsh conditions of isolated desert bases, having gone through a series of difficult trials, hardships, and inevitable suffering, I have never demanded any special privileges or awards for myself, driven only by a sincere desire to serve my country faithfully. At times, it seemed to me that I had become too stern and closed, which is why my superiors even had to force me to take the required vacations, insistently demanding to leave the secret experimental base at least for a short while and go to a big city for a change of scenery. Given the special secrecy of my status, any movements were always accompanied by the strictest measures of state security. The ride in the official jeep only caused me a dull irritation. I never liked this ostentatious fuss. So as soon as I arrived at the place, I politely stopped the accompanying guards, and with my hands deep in my coat pockets, I walked on foot. For the first time in many years, I officially visited the walls of my native National Defense University, having received an invitation to the 98th Alumni Conference. Having climbed up to the main podium, I began my speech, looking at the rows of young, hopeful cadets sitting in the hall. Their wide-open eyes clearly showed genuine awe and admiration. A young leading specialist, whose age had barely crossed the 40-year mark. I occupied a place of honor on the stage right next to the university rector, catching the admiring glances of a new generation of students, in whom one could easily recognize one's own portrait from the past. My memory involuntarily returned to those days when I was similarly engrossed in reading the technical works of Jai Yunshu. Although over the past decade of hectic life, memories of him seemed almost erased by routine. Memory helpfully brought back that very episode. I remained in the car, driving away from the northern quarter of Guangzhou University. 10 long years have passed since then, during which we have had absolutely no news of each other. Several years ago, I tried to make inquiries through closed channels about the unit where Jai Yunshu served, sincerely hoping to find him to finally express my accumulated gratitude. But they answered me dryly that Jai Yunshu had long ago resigned and completely severed all ties with his former department, disappearing into obscurity. Sitting on the raised platform of the honorary presidium, I once again gazed into the inspired faces of the students sitting below. They were the true future of our defensive power, just as we ourselves had once been long ago. And yet my heart was irresistibly drawn back to my hometown, forcing me to seek a meeting with Jai Yunshu. Without really understanding why, he found himself on forced leave at the insistence of management. I felt an urgent need to go somewhere, although the matter was not limited to simple conversations with Jai Yunshu. By this age, I had already devoted my entire life to serving the party and the people. After leaving the walls of the National Defense University, I rushed back to my native land, trying not to disturb anyone with my visits. The steps led me to that same old large courtyard where I spent my childhood under a spreading yutun tree, although more than 10 years have passed since then. The tree itself remained almost unchanged in appearance, retaining its original appearance. Only the ground beneath it was carefully filled with concrete, replacing the familiar yellow dust of previous years. The courtyard itself remained the same, the red brick walls under green tiles still towered outside. As I passed by, I involuntarily glanced at the place where I once lived. By that time, I had long since stopped feeling any longing for the Yi family's parents or for Song Jinyan, who had broken under their oppression. It seems that even if I were to die somewhere in a foreign land, I would not shed a single tear. This time, on my way home, in addition to completing official duties, I sincerely wanted to personally find and thank Uncle Jai Yun. Unfortunately, after contacting the relatives of the Jai family, I found out that they had left this city a long time ago, and no one knew anything about the exact traces of Uncle Jai Yun's return. The rumors circulating were extremely vague and contradictory. Perhaps he left with the Jai clan somewhere to the north, avoiding unnecessary meetings with his former acquaintances. I myself, weighed down by the burden of the years I had lived and by fatigue, felt only slight disappointment from the lack of free time. Realizing that my vacation is coming to an end and I need to return to my work duties, it was impossible to linger any longer, so I finally walked slowly back to the old courtyard under that same tree. Having left the company car by the road, I went downstairs to exchange a few words with the neighbors. If they hadn't kept silent then, I might have been able to find out the truth much earlier. Carrying a simple basket in my hands, I headed to the old cemetery to the graves of the parents of the E family. Not far from them, there was another hillock. Exactly 5 years ago, Song Jinyan, finally broken by endless torture and despair, committed a terrible act. Using a sharp knife in a fit of madness, he took the lives of the very parents of the Yi family who once loved him more than anything in the world. All this time, he suffered from a severe form of depression. After the massacre of Yi's parents, he locked himself in the bathroom, where he was discovered. When help arrived, 3 lifeless bodies were already frozen in the house. Then Uncle Jai Yun sat for a long time, pressing his forehead against the cold coffin, but even then he did not say a word to me, protecting me from unnecessary pain. Standing by Yi's parents' tombstone, Uncle Jai Yun sighed heavily. Looking up at the cloudy sky, he said quietly, "I'm finally back. Now they have all found eternal peace, and there is no need to disturb the departed about anything anymore. Perhaps we have all made many fatal mistakes in the past, and the punishment that came was only a manifestation of the supreme will of fate. We can only hope that now, finding ourselves at an infinite distance from each other, we will finally find the long-awaited happiness, right?" Slowly rising from his knees, Jai Yunshu stepped towards the sunset. His lonely figure cast a long, endless shadow on the ground. At that moment, that long-ago day when I was 17 flashed in my memory, and the image of the man frozen before me. That same pure face with a soft, exciting gaze turned towards the rays of the sun. If everything had turned out differently then, perhaps our destiny would have flowed in a completely different direction. But the subjunctive mood does not exist, and he is destined to wander in this endless inner fire until the end of his days. Before my allotted life comes to an end, I return to my true home. Crossing the threshold, I saw my wife sleeping peacefully on the sofa, hugging her child. Wrapped in a soft blanket, her face glowed with the peaceful happiness of a mother. Lin Kaienxia and I got married when I was already 30, and I am still amazed at how devotedly she waited for me all these years. Quietly approaching the window, I looked into the tiny face of the baby, peacefully snoring in the arms of my wife, in whose features the continuation of our life could be discerned. Unable to contain the overwhelming feelings, I gently touched his tiny palm. Lin Kaienxia only lowered her gaze slightly, making a quiet, warning sound. "The baby just fell asleep. Try not to wake him up. You'll be back in a minute, right? I'm a good master in this house, after all." I never uttered unnecessary words, but at the sight of my wife and child a heavy wave of guilt invariably rose in my heart. All these long years, I have been disappearing into secret open-air facilities. I physically didn't have time to be with them, which naturally gave rise to a deep sense of incompleteness and duty. Gently hugging my wife from behind, I took a deep breath of her familiar scent and closed my eyes for a moment. Now I have a truly complete, strong family, and even despite all my busy schedule, I will love my wife and children with all my heart. There is no way in hell I will let them experience the loneliness and suffering that befell me during my own childhood. Everything will definitely be fine, just like in our homeland, which is being transformed before our eyes. Step by step, confidently moving towards prosperity, because now each of us has both a reliable country and a warm home.